Use common sense. She's a fake mom.
I was at a loss for words. Why did I have to be subjected to such harsh words? My husband William's son, Joseph, had recently been accepted into a prestigious medical school. I had decided to cover the enrollment fee and had just returned from the bank. Upon returning, I tried on the suit I had prepared for the entrance ceremony to show them, and that's when it happened. Their reactions were dismissive. William frowned, and Joseph clearly looked displeased. I couldn't understand why. Being called a fake, I felt as if thorns were deeply embedded in me.
That's right. The fake mom shouldn't come to the entrance ceremony.
In my despair, I couldn't retort. Who could have predicted that the family I decided to love would betray me so easily? It's not something that can be summed up with just sad. Since then, every day seemed to fade in color. On the day of the entrance ceremony, I didn't go and left the suit in my room as I went out. At that moment, my mobile phone started ringing. It was William.
Hey, what's this all about? You liar!
He shouted at me. The truth, which I myself was unaware of, was soon to be revealed by the person next to me. My name is Patricia. I am 51 years old and single. All my friends are married, and some even have children who are now 18. Lately, as they finished raising their children, I started going to cafes more often with my friends who now had free time. Listening to their stories, I found them endearing or tough at times. But everyone doesn't seem much different. Walking back from the cafe, I muttered and pondered alone. If I had a husband and children, how would I be spending my time now? Would I be reflecting on the tough and happy moments of parenting, just like my friends? However, I don't dwell on it too much, even though I'm not married. What I think about now are my deceased parents. My dad had been ill since he was young. Even when treatment was tough, he always smiled kindly, like the sun. Even when he became bedridden, he continued his hobby of reading and sometimes gave me book recommendations. My dad passed away when I was 30, and I cried with my mom. After losing my dad, I became lethargic and shocked for a while. It seems my mom felt the same. After my dad's death, she suddenly became very forgetful, and the house became a mess. Mom should have been tidy, but something was off. Thinking this, I persuaded her to go to the hospital, where we were told she was starting to show signs of dementia. Living alone, I immediately moved back to my parents' home to take care of Mom. From then on, I spent my days facing Mom and her dementia. Mom would start looking for the trash I had thrown away. Even though no one had visited, she would repeatedly open the front door, saying someone had come. At times, she would even become sad over the death of a cat we never owned. Mom and I spent a tumultuous 20 years, not knowing what was what. And just recently, Mom passed away. In the midst of my loss, I finished the funeral and started to sort through her belongings. It wasn't something that could be finished in a day or two, so I proceeded little by little, taking breaks. Opening a window, I looked up at the sky. The clear winter sky was mixed with the breeze of spring. It had been a while since I felt the flow of the seasons. Maybe I've been too tense up until now. Taking a deep breath, I stood in the kitchen to make some coffee. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was a resident of the apartment and a friend of Mom's. Before my parents passed away, I had inherited an old apartment and had been the owner since my 30s. Because of this, I was close with the residents. They were all friendly, nice people who would share fruits and vegetables with me. The apartment was about a 10-minute walk from my parents' home. The fact that she had come all the way here meant there might have been some trouble. Feeling slightly anxious, I went out to see, but that wasn't the case. She had heard about Mom's passing and came to check on me, worried. She was about the same age as Mom and had been very close to her. I answered with a forced smile.
I'm okay. I knew this day would come eventually. But you seem to have been down lately. I'm really okay. I was also taken care of by your mom.
Yes, I know. Her eyes were swollen from crying, truly mourning. We reminisced and promised to visit the grave together sometime. If there were people who cherished her like this, Mom would have been happy. Suddenly, I remembered something. The apartment nearby has to be demolished. A city development project was decided, and the area where the apartment now stands is to be turned into a road.
That's 5 years from now.
While drinking coffee, I absent-mindedly stared at the calendar on the table. Within these 5 years, I need to have the residents relocate and find a demolition contractor. A part of the cost will be covered by the city if I apply. Still, the idea of demolishing it is somewhat reluctant. To outsiders, it may seem like an old apartment, but it holds sentimental value for me. Frozen water pipes, clogged toilets, noise complaints. Looking back, there were many difficulties. There were issues I couldn't solve alone, but with my parents' help or by consulting professionals, we somehow managed. Spending days looking at paint samples for the exterior walls is also a fond memory.
It's a shame, but it has to be demolished.
The residents need time to find a new place to live. I'll make a notice soon. Losing Mom and having to let go of that apartment was incredibly sad. To distract myself from those feelings, I quickly finished my coffee. Then, without spending too much time on sorting through her belongings, I began to create the notice. The apartment residents came to visit me almost every day. Everyone was worried about me. Those who had known me longer would reminisce about memories with Mom. Of course, even those who hadn't known us as long would start conversations. Lately, I've been talking a lot with William Miller, who moved in about a year ago. He chose this apartment because the rent was cheaper than the surrounding market rates. He lives with his son, Joseph, and mentioned how education costs a lot of money.
It must have been hard. Well, it can't be helped. Mom is probably laughing in heaven now. You're strong. I lost my wife a few years ago, and it was hard to recover.
Oh, was that so?
Yes, she was ill, with a troublesome, incurable disease.
Was she hospitalized?
She wasn't, but I took care of her at home. It must have been difficult with Joseph around. Taking care of my wife while cooking and attending school events for him was hard.
His smiling face didn't show any of the hardships. Maybe that's part of his charm. Moreover, he always entertained me with his interesting stories. Talking with William made the sadness of losing Mom and having to demolish the apartment seem to disappear. Gradually, I realized I was becoming attracted to him. Even when shopping, I found myself wondering what William's favorite dishes were.
Oh, what am I thinking?
I made a gesture of brushing something away from my face, trying not to think about it any further.
I'm in my 50s. I should be focusing on being responsible, not on romance.
That's what I told myself. However, whenever I saw William, we would have fun talking again, and my resolve would waver. Before long, William and I had become closer than before. One sunny day, William came to me with a serious look. He said he had something to talk about, so I decided to stay home that day to listen. Maybe he had come to talk about moving out soon after seeing the notice. As we sat facing each other, nervously, he began. Actually, the thing is...
What's wrong? You're so formal all of a sudden.
Well, I've liked you for a long time now. Slowly, he took out a small case from his pocket. As he opened the lid, he said to me, "Will you marry me?" Inside was a very elegant ring shining brightly.
Me? Are you sure?
I was so surprised I had to do a double take. I thought it might be a mistake or a joke, but it seemed not. William leaned in and said, "Patricia, you're so calm, yet you look so happy when we talk. I want to be with you for the rest of my life."
But I'm already 51.
Age doesn't matter. I don't choose people based on something like that. William said to me with a serious look. Marriage is about life. I want you to be the person who lives and shares that life with me. William. But maybe it's not okay because I have a child. That's not true. I like you, William. So, I accepted his proposal and we decided to get married. That night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, I never dreamed something like this would happen at this point in my life. Life is full of surprises. While looking at my sagging arms, I wondered if I could even wear a wedding dress. For a few days, that thought consumed me until William came with good news. Joseph had been accepted into a prestigious medical school.
Oh, congratulations.
Really, it's such a relief. He was so nervous during the exams, now we can finally relax.
Should we celebrate? Maybe order some food?
Well, there's a bit of a problem.
What is it?
Actually, even though he got accepted, we can't afford the enrollment fee and tuition. Medical school is quite expensive.
That's terrible.
We need to figure out the enrollment fee by the deadline at least. Seeing him so genuinely troubled made me worry too. Without a solution, Joseph couldn't enroll in medical school. If only I had been more responsible. William clenched his fist, frustration seeping through. Joseph has been saying since Mom got sick that he's going to cure her. That's why he aimed for medical school. I didn't know how much it would cost to attend medical school. I couldn't cover the full amount, but maybe I could manage the enrollment fee. Actually, I can cover the enrollment fee.
Really?
His expression brightened instantly. Yes. After all, we're family now, aren't we? Thank you, thank you. This way, Joseph can become a great doctor. Please don't cry so much. Let's support Joseph together. Later, I asked for the exact amount of the enrollment fee and started arranging the transfer. Actually, I was receiving a displacement allowance from the city for demolishing the apartment. I checked my balance and told William and Joseph that the enrollment fee seemed manageable.
That's great. Thank you, Patricia. No, Mom.
I'm so relieved.
All right, enough of that. Let's start our celebration dinner. Congratulations on your acceptance, Joseph. This looks delicious. Let's eat.
As they joyfully ate, saying how delicious it was, I felt like I was looking at my own son, which made me incredibly happy. Thinking about starting a new life with these two wonderful people made me feel much more positive. I felt motivated to do my best for this new family. The next day, after confirming the details of the destination account, I went to the bank. There were few customers that day, and I was called almost immediately after taking a number. As I approached the counter, I made eye contact and exchanged a light greeting with someone in the back. It was Mr. Davis, the branch manager. He stopped what he was doing and came over to me when he noticed me. It's been a while. How have you been since we last spoke?
Fine, thank you.
I've received a lot of help from you before. I had received assistance from Mr. Davis regarding the apartment and other assets. We've had a long relationship, spanning about 20 years. When Mom passed away, he was very supportive, something I vividly remember. Mr. Davis was highly regarded by my dad as a smart and dependable person.
What brings you in today?
I showed him my bank account and the details of the destination for the transfer.
Actually, I've recently decided to get married. I'm here to transfer enrollment fees for my stepchild. Oh, that's wonderful news.
At least, that's what I expected him to say, but he didn't. Instead, he looked slightly troubled, glancing between the transfer details and me.
May I have a word with you about this?
Both the teller and I, puzzled, followed Mr. Davis. We were led to a small room at the back of the bank, the same place we'd discussed inheritance matters before. Mr. Davis, looking at the transfer details, asked me, "This is for medical school, correct?"
The son aims to become a doctor? Yes, that's what I've been told.
Excuse me, but could you tell me how you came to marry your husband?
Excuse me?
Caught off guard, I nevertheless decided to be frank. I talked about how, after losing Mom, I became closer to William, a resident of the apartment I managed. About how William had cared for his terminally ill wife while raising his son alone. And that his wife had passed away a few years ago, leaving him living with his son. That he proposed because he wanted to spend his life with me. And then, right after that, the issue of Joseph's enrollment fees came up.
I felt like I could really make an effort for our new family. That's truly wonderful. But this William person. Oh, my husband's name is William Miller.
William Miller? He repeated the name softly, then tapped his fingers on the desk as if pondering. After a few seconds, he stopped tapping and said, "May I handle this matter?"
But... Please, leave it to me.
He stood up with a smile. Then, opening the door.
Please.
He ushered me out. I left the bank, still confused about what had just transpired. On my way home, I thought about Mr. Davis. He had looked a bit troubled when he heard William's name. Why, I wonder. But I trust him. He's always been dependable, and there's never been a time he hasn't come through when he said he'd handle something. There's still time before the deadline, so it should be fine. I decided to leave everything in Mr. Davis's hands. That night, I tried on the suit I had prepared for the entrance ceremony in front of William and his son. It was a beautiful white suit.
How do I look, you too?
However, their response was cold.
Did you buy that?
Are you really coming to the entrance ceremony? William frowned, and Joseph clearly looked displeased. I didn't understand why.
Is it not okay?
It's not about being okay. Think about it logically. You're a fake mom. My heart skipped a beat. Being called a fake, I felt as if thorns were deeply embedded in me.
That's right, Patricia. A fake mom shouldn't come to the entrance ceremony.
Fake ones shouldn't come to the entrance ceremony. I was speechless. Why did I have to be subjected to such harsh words? As I was about to lose consciousness, William sighed deeply. Let's just tell the truth.
The truth?
What do you think was the reason we were nice to you?
It's for the money. For my enrollment fee and tuition. I can't believe it.
You have no other merits to marry someone like you.
What do you mean? Was it all an act?
Yes, it was.
It took a long time to get close to you, a heartbroken person, and secure a marriage.
I would have preferred a younger and more beautiful mom.
We thought, being the owner of the apartment and having inherited a lot from your parents, you had plenty of assets.
Would have been nice if you paid for the whole tuition too. Disappointing. Can't believe you only paid the enrollment fee.
There has to be a limit.
So, it's over. No more pretending to be a family.
We'll stop being nice.
They laughed loudly. Not understanding what was so funny, I stood there, stunned. In my despair, I couldn't retort. This white suit now seemed like a symbol of my solitary excitement. Who could have predicted such an easy betrayal by the family I decided to love? It's not something that can be summed up with just sad. Their laughter echoed in my ears, and I covered them to block out the sound. From that day on, I was continually ignored by them, even though I was right there. It was as if I didn't exist. Such experiences had worn me down. Thinking about the future filled my nights with anxiety and sleeplessness, making it hard to find rest. Days passed in a blur of sleep deprivation until the day of the entrance ceremony arrived. That day, I didn't go to the ceremony and left the suit in my room as I went out. Wandering the streets, I regretted my naive actions. Why did I believe their words so blindly? It was my fault for not doubting them. How should I deal with those two from now on? That's all I could think about. Then, suddenly, I felt someone tap my shoulder and call my name. Turning around, there was Mr. Davis, smiling.
I saw you just now. What's wrong?
I couldn't possibly tell him I was deceived by my spouse and his son. I awkwardly looked away. Just then, my mobile phone started ringing. It was William.
Excuse me, I need to take this call.
I excused myself to Mr. Davis and pressed the answer button. William shouted at me.
What the hell is this? You liar. What? At the entrance ceremony registration, they said my enrollment has been canceled because the $20,000 enrollment fee hasn't been paid. That's ridiculous. Explain this.
He was ranting over the phone. Indeed, that day I went to the bank and left this matter in Mr. Davis's hands. As I was puzzled, Mr. Davis next to me offered his help.
Let me explain.
He took my mobile phone, switched it to speaker, and started talking.
Hello, William Miller. I'm Davis, a banker from around here. What? You were involved in a scandal in another town before, weren't you? Accused of embezzling company funds.
Mr. Davis spoke plainly and clearly.
What are you talking about? You fled here from your hometown.
I was quite surprised.
Hey, don't talk nonsense about Dad. It would have been better if it were nonsense, but it was a big scandal back then, and I remember it well. Stop it! After all, it was an embezzlement case that even involved our bank due to our business dealings with that company.
It's hard to forget. Mr. Davis's smile vanished, replaced by a stern expression as he recalled the past.
I remembered your name. When Patricia mentioned your name, I was suspicious. What? Patricia, what did you tell him? I heard you got married. Admirable how quickly you moved on after getting divorced. Divorced? You said she died. Was that a lie too? It wasn't a terminal illness, and the death was a lie. You were served divorce papers because of that scandal. Shut up. Just send the enrollment fee. You approached kind Patricia, pretending to be a struggling single father, planning to get money out of her, didn't you? Shut up. It's none of your business. Hey, Patricia. Don't believe a word he says. It's all lies. No. The lies are all yours.
The day I went to the bank, I realized I had forgotten something on my way home and had to return. That's when I met Mr. Davis again. He mentioned he had some concerns about William and asked if we could delay the transfer a bit. Believing Mr. Davis, since there was still time until the payment deadline, I left the money in my bank account. I had told them I went to the bank, which led them to mistakenly believe I had made the transfer. I never said I had sent the money. That night, after showing them the suit, I discovered their true nature and intentions. It was then I understood why Mr. Davis wanted to wait before making the transfer. Today, I was on my way to the bank to clarify everything. I hadn't expected to run into him in the middle of the street, but hearing everything confirmed my suspicions.
I kept asking William and Joseph to talk to me. What's with the suddenness? But they both ignored me, unaware that I hadn't made the transfer.
William and Joseph were silent on the other end of the phone. Confronted with the truth by both Mr. Davis and me, they were rendered speechless. A few seconds later, the call ended and only ambient noise filled the air. After that day, the divorce between William and me was swiftly finalized. With everything exposed and his understanding of my financial status, William probably decided it was time to cut his losses. I never expected the smiling facade he presented to be just that, a facade. He and Joseph fled, leaving not just my apartment but also the town. Joseph's behavior had been problematic, often causing trouble at school. Though his academic performance was good, which is probably why his teachers overlooked his issues. Looking at their vacated room, I reflected on such rumors. Can such things really happen? It felt like something out of a drama or manga, with stories too bizarre to discern as truth or fiction. Yet, there was the undeniable fact of his capability to get accepted into a prestigious medical school. I regretted that such intellect couldn't have been applied more constructively. I've had enough of marriage. Years later, my apartment was to be rebuilt nearby, just a few minutes' walk from its original location. On the day I posted the notice about the apartment, I also went to the municipal office to discuss the displacement fee. That's when an error was discovered in the construction blueprints for the development project. The development area was reviewed, and it turned out that only a slight adjustment to the apartment's location was necessary. Both I and the residents were surprised and pleased by this turn of events. Though the reconstruction took time, it was completed sooner than expected. Taking this opportunity, the plumbing and other facilities were completely updated. However, I wondered if the residents would choose to stay. As I observed, it seemed they were willing to remain.
Sorry to trouble you a bit longer.
A friend of Mom's, who had made plans with me to visit her grave in remembrance, said this with a smile. Now, we visit the grave together once or twice a year and have meals together, enjoying a close relationship. Everyone moved to the new apartment smoothly, and the relocation proceeded without issues. The development also progressed, changing not just the apartment but the surrounding ambience. The creation of new roads was welcomed by delivery personnel for easier access. Going to the nearby supermarket became more convenient with the wider roads. The atmosphere seemed to brighten a bit. Exchanging greetings with the apartment residents remained unchanged. Everyone was still friendly and pleasant. Life is unpredictable, isn't it? My quiet murmur dissolved into the clear blue sky.
A housekeeper who doesn't even cook is grounds for divorce, right?
Benjamin, my husband, punched me in the stomach. I don't think he put much force into it. But that's where my precious baby is.
Hey! Stop it!
I was so surprised by Benjamin's unexpected behavior that I overreacted. Seeing this, Benjamin let out a cheerful laugh.
If you don't like it, just make lunch already. See, even the kid is saying, "Poor daddy, starving because of mommy." Okay, I get it. Just stop. Just don't hit my stomach.
I screamed almost like a shriek, and finally, Benjamin stopped his hand.
I'm tired. Just do as you're told from the start. Make it quickly, right now.
Satisfied with his own words, Benjamin looked up with content. And then, he froze as he looked at the computer screen in front of him. What? Somehow, I got off the chair, kept Benjamin at bay with scissors nearby, and said,
"This time, I won't let you make excuses. Well, not that you'll need to."
You. This has to be a lie. I won't let him get away with excuses this time. I'll expose his true nature for sure. My name is Evelyn, I'm 29. I work at an electronics manufacturer, but I'm currently on maternity leave, so I'm almost like a housewife. I say almost because there's a reason. I do some chores and participate in irregular remote meetings. That's the only thing I insist on. The reason is, I handed over the project I was involved in to my junior when I got pregnant. I wanted to know the progress, so I insisted on participating. But I hardly ever speak up, it's more like I'm just observing. Still, I was happy to participate and know how the project is progressing. But that's just working for free. It's a waste of time, you should quit. The one grumbling with dissatisfaction is my husband, Benjamin. He's 36, 7 years my senior. Originally, he was my boss at work. Benjamin, competent at his job, was always relied upon by those around him. Furthermore, I was struck by his kindness and guidance, and before I knew it, I was drawn to him. It was considered lucky to have married someone like Benjamin, and many envied us, but after we got married, he changed. Don't say things like that. My job is just doing odd jobs and attending meetings, you know? Sometimes, I'm just observing. That's a waste of time. If you have time like that, why don't you clean the room? I've noticed dust accumulating under the furniture lately. Benjamin pointed at the gap between the TV stand and the floor. That spot can't be cleaned without crouching down. Now in my last month of pregnancy, it's utterly impossible to crouch with this belly, making it hard to breathe just from walking. So, indeed, I've neglected cleaning in some areas. I do what I can, but I'm sorry. Normally, a wife's parents would come over to help with the housework at a time like this. But you don't have that, do you? Benjamin said this with a sigh. My heart ached. My parents died in an accident 10 years ago. It's been 10 years, but it still feels like just yesterday. Yet, Benjamin carelessly belittles me for not having parents like now. And I always ended up apologizing. I'm sorry for causing you trouble. Then, Benjamin would always smile with satisfaction. You're lucky to have married such a generous man like me. I never thought I'd marry an ordinary woman with no special qualities like you, Evelyn. This is how Benjamin satisfies his ego. It's a daily repetition of sarcasm and boasting. He wasn't like this before we got married. Maybe it's common for both men and women to change after marriage. Sadly, Benjamin has a very good public image, so when I complain to others, they don't believe me. I get irrelevant responses like, "You're just being spoiled," or "It's nice to have someone so reliable." I could have endured it if it were just as everyone says. I could just ignore it. But lately, I've been at my wit's end with Benjamin returning from work. When the doorbell rings from evening to night, that's the signal of his return. Even if I was in the middle of housework, I would stop everything and rush to the entrance. And while watching the door open, I'd hope, "Please, let Benjamin be in a good mood today." When he's in a good mood, it's just reports of the company's doing well or I landed a contract. The problem is when he's in a bad mood. Arg, so annoying. Acting all high and mighty just because they're a client. Those outdated fools. As soon as he enters the entrance, Benjamin is stomping around, angry. We welcome back. He throws his bag at me and heads to the shower, cursing me under his breath. This whole routine terrified me. When this continued day after day, I even considered divorce. I first talked to a coworker, but they didn't believe me. Benjamin? That's hard to believe. You're exaggerating. Look, you're pregnant and probably just tired, right? Maybe you need a change of scenery? It was as if they were saying I was the one being unreasonable. Sadly, I understand where my coworker is coming from. The Benjamin we worked with was perfect in everyone's eyes. always smiling, gentle in his words and actions, and calm. It's hard to believe that he could change like this. I wouldn't have believed it myself in the past. Maybe it's just temporary. Perhaps he's just irritable because he's busy and tired. I decided to think positively. It's not like he's physically harmed me. Though my body tenses up when he throws things or yells, he's never hurt me. I'm sure someday Benjamin will be as kind as before. That's what I hoped and prayed. No one believes that Benjamin could change like this. But there was one person who might believe me. That was my uncle, Daniel. My grandparents live far away, and my parents have passed away. After the accident, I was left alone, but I had one relative I could rely on. That was my father's brother, Daniel. He had moved to New York before my father, so by chance, he lived close to our family. Daniel looks, honestly, intimidating. He's 6 feet 3 inches tall and well-built, so just standing there can be imposing. But on the inside, he's incredibly kind and wonderful. When I was young, Daniel would often play with me in place of my busy parents. Back then, I thought Daniel was unemployed. He spent that much time with me. I think he doted on me like I was his own daughter.
Actually, I was the first one to ever hold Evelyn, you know.
Daniel and my father would often joke and compete like that. So, after my parents passed away, it was Daniel who supported me. He took care of most of the arrangements while I was in a daze. When I couldn't even bring myself to eat, he'd make tasteless oatmeal or pasta that would fall off the fork with just a touch. It wasn't delicious, but I remember I ended up eating it anyway. It was also Daniel who found me a job when I dropped out of college after my parents' accident. I feel bad for using your connections. To my hesitation, Daniel kindly said, "Don't get it wrong, it's just an introduction. How you works from here on out is up to Evelyn. I won't know anything about it. What I couldn't repay to my parents, I want to repay to Daniel." That was my goal. I had endured living with Benjamin, who only spewed verbal abuse, but one day, Benjamin finally raised his hand to me. It might not have been intentional at first. I knew I had to be careful that day because Benjamin's mood was worse than usual. But I was also feeling unwell and didn't have the energy to deal with it. So, when Benjamin complained about everything, the dinner menu, my face, my expression, the housework, I accidentally muttered under my breath, "Ah, enough, so annoying." The moment those words left my mouth, I could feel the room freeze over. This is bad, I've done it now. I need to apologize quickly. I started to apologize immediately, but it was too late. A magazine flew right past my face. Benjamin, in his anger, threw it at me.
Hey! What did you just say? Did you just tell me, who's tired from work, that I'm annoying? Hey!
From there on, it was useless to say anything. Benjamin started throwing whatever was nearby, one after another. Fortunately, it seemed he still had some reason, as he only threw light or thin items. Having done it once, the barrier to doing it again must have lowered. From that day, even though he wasn't using much force, Benjamin started to raise his hand over trivial matters. Scared, I thought of consulting Daniel. Actually, Daniel works at the same company as us. He introduced me to this company because he could be more accommodating if it was his own company. Benjamin never mentioned Daniel, so he probably doesn't know we work for the same company. But I had introduced him before, so he was aware of Daniel as part of my family. I was sure Daniel would believe me. I had something like a conviction about it. But, unfortunately, Daniel was on an overseas business trip at the time. Concerned for me, "I can listen over the phone if that's okay," Daniel said. For a moment, I thought of leaning on him, but knowing Daniel, If he found out about my situation, he might fly back. That wouldn't be fair to the company or Daniel. Reluctantly, I decided to wait for Daniel's return. I tried consulting coworkers and friends, but no one believed me, as expected. Moreover, somehow, the fact that I was talking about Benjamin reached him. Benjamin then said, "I meant it as a form of affection." He apparently said this with a lonely smile. Everyone completely believed this excuse. As a result, I was treated as just a woman with an overactive imagination. One day, while I was working in the room as usual, Benjamin came in. Today is unusually a work-from-home day for Benjamin as well. I knew in advance because he told me.
"I'm hungry. Where's lunch?"
Benjamin said, almost like he was throwing the words at me. "Oh, just wait a bit. I'm working right now."
Huh?
Benjamin let out an annoyed tone. With that voice, I immediately understood. Here it comes. The usual thing. I braced myself in an instant, preparing mentally. Usually, it's an arm or a leg. And then, Benjamin, with an unpleasant smirk, approached me.
"A housekeeper who doesn't even cook is grounds for divorce, right?"
Benjamin punched me in the stomach. I don't think he put much force into it. But that's where my precious baby is.
"Hey! Stop it!"
I was so surprised by Benjamin's unexpected behavior that I overreacted. He had never laid a hand on my stomach before, no matter what. I curled up in the chair, trying to protect my belly with my arms, encircling it. Tears welled up in my eyes from fear and anxiety. Seeing this, Benjamin let out a cheerful laugh.
"If you don't like it, just make lunch already. See, even the kid is saying, 'Poor daddy, starving because of mommy.' Ouch! Please, please stop."
How can he do such terrible things? I'm his wife, and the child in this belly is his. I couldn't understand at all.
"I don't want to do this either, you know? But what can I do? It's because you won't make lunch. Right? Poor daddy, huh?"
Even as he spoke, Benjamin's hand didn't stop. He kept hitting my stomach over and over, relentlessly. Resisting was difficult while sitting in the chair. I could only focus on defending myself.
Okay, I get it. Just stop. Just don't hit the stomach."
Screaming almost like a shriek, Benjamin finally stopped his hand.
I'm tired. Just do as you're told from the start. Make it quickly, right now."
Satisfied with his own words, Benjamin looked up contentedly. And then, he froze as he looked at the computer screen in front of him. What? Somehow, I got off the chair, kept Benjamin at bay with scissors nearby, and said, "This time, I won't let you make excuses." "Well, not that you'll need to. This has to be a lie." The one to respond to the flustered Benjamin, turning pale, was someone on the computer.
"I wish it were a lie. I never thought you could be such a despicable person."
The one holding his head on the screen was the manager. Other employees were also looking at this with faces of disbelief.
"No, that's not true. I didn't hear anything. That's right. I was framed. I was deceived."
Trying to ingratiate himself, Benjamin clung to the computer.
"That sounds terrible. I told you, didn't I? I'm working, so wait a bit. I haven't lied or deceived anyone. So, then you should have clearly said you were in a remote meeting. Then I would have."
Benjamin started to say, but caught himself. He was about to say, "Then I wouldn't have hit you." Benjamin, who cares so much about his public image and how he's perceived by society. The cunning and sly Benjamin wouldn't even utter a harsh word at the company, let alone raise a hand. That's why no one believed me when I complained. I felt a sense of despair at that time. But then I thought a bit. If they wouldn't believe me, I needed proof. Knowing there was a remote meeting while Benjamin was working from home, I had secretly plotted to expose his true face. I just hadn't expected him to aim for my stomach. That was a lapse in judgment on my part.
Anyway, everyone at the company is a witness now. You can't talk your way out of this. I want a divorce. I don't want to see your face ever again. But, Evelyn, I can't without you.
As Benjamin let out a pitiful voice, the doorbell chimed. Trying to head there, Benjamin blocked my way, trying to stop me.
Wait! We're in the middle of talking. Is it okay to raise your voice like that? The computer is still connected, you know?
Ah. Distracted and flustered, Benjamin let me slip by him towards the entrance. But just before I could get away, he caught up and grabbed my arm.
Stop! Let go! This spot is out of view from the computer, perfect. Hey, we need to come up with an excuse together. Should we say it was a prank? That's the safest bet. It'll be more believable coming from you, so you tell everyone. No way! I'm tired of watching your face, being worked like a slave, and living in fear.
Help me. Just as I screamed inside, I heard a noise from the entrance, and then the door burst open, and someone entered. Seeing who it was, I collapsed on the spot in relief.
Are you okay, Evelyn? Daniel.
It seems Daniel was secretly participating in that meeting too. He must have rushed over immediately after seeing the video. It was fortunate that the entrance door was unlocked.
Are you hurt? How's your stomach?
Daniel rushed to my side and pulled me away from Benjamin as if rescuing me. Then, shielding me with his own body from Benjamin, he hid me behind his back. Thanks to Daniel's broad back, I couldn't see Benjamin anymore. Likely, Benjamin couldn't see me either.
Daniel, Evelyn's uncle, right? Long time no see.
Peeking around Daniel's back, I saw Benjamin trying to force a smile and nodding in greeting. Daniel straightened up and looked down at Benjamin. Being considerably taller, Daniel made Benjamin look very small and frail.
Evelyn, can you stand? You should rest on that sofa over there.
Ignoring Benjamin, Daniel supported me and moved to the sofa. Sitting down provided some relief. Benjamin tried to approach me, but Daniel stopped him with a threatening look.
After you rest a bit, let's go to the hospital just to be safe. That's an overreaction. It was just a little nudge. That's part of affection, a couple's touch.
How could anyone think that way about what happened?
You be quiet. We'll have a thorough discussion once we've confirmed that Evelyn and the baby are safe. Don't worry, the meeting was recorded.
So you saw that because you're with the same company. Benjamin made a fist in frustration and fell silent.
Evelyn, you married quite the man.
I felt sorry facing Daniel's stern look and sigh, unable to say anything. The hospital visit confirmed that the baby was fine. Relieved, I felt my whole body relax. Then, Daniel, Benjamin, and I decided to head to the company. Daniel said,
"Think of the baby. Leave the rest to me."
But this was a matter between Benjamin and me. Even if it's Daniel, I couldn't leave everything to him. We could have postponed it to another day, but knowing Benjamin, the more time he had, the more likely he was to come up with something. Now in the last month of pregnancy, with labor possibly starting at any time, it was best to resolve this quickly. I am a mother. I have a duty to ensure this child can be born into a safe environment. Upon arriving at the company, we were immediately led to a separate room. Daniel must have contacted them in advance. The employees present at the meeting must have also given their testimonies. In the large conference room were the meeting members, Benjamin, Daniel, and me. I took my bag from Daniel and pulled out the divorce papers. I had gotten them from the municipal office a long time ago and kept them in my bag. Benjamin looked puzzled for a moment, but then forced a troubled smile. I admit I did things that could be misunderstood. It's my fault too, so I'll accept the divorce. I have no problem with the compensation in the divorce court, and I'll pay child support. Perhaps because he was in front of everyone, Benjamin seemed unusually understanding. His acceptance made the conversation progress smoothly. However, when we reached a certain point, Benjamin froze. You want me to resign or transfer? Yes. I plan to return to work after my maternity and parental leave are over. It wouldn't be good for either of us if you were still here. That's why. I actually want you to leave. Benjamin stared at me intently and nodded. I see. But what does the company think?
What are you trying to say? Not to boast, but I believe I'm a valuable asset to the company. I have good performance. No issues with interpersonal relationships. Plus, I have a wide network among peers and clients. Indeed, the outwardly competent Benjamin could be considered an ace at the company. He was what you'd call a key player. He was so well regarded that it was said it was only a matter of time before he became an executive. On the other hand, you, for better or worse, is just an ordinary female employee. Oh, I'm not trying to belittle you. Just stating the facts. I understand. Moreover, as a mother of a young child, inevitably you'll take more leaves. You'll probably end up inconveniencing the company, coworkers, everyone. This was something I had considered since becoming pregnant. Without parents, I had no one to rely on. In any situation, I had to manage on my own. While it's an unavoidable circumstance, to the company, I might be seen as a troublesome employee. I couldn't help but understand what Benjamin was trying to say. He implied that the company would choose him, the valuable ace, over me, who brought the inconvenience of potential risks, even though he had caused this issue. See? So the best thing is to forget all this and get along again. That's the best for the baby too. No, I can't do that. What? Benjamin looked utterly astounded. Just endure and accept it again? That's ridiculous. Nothing would change. Do you expect me to endure endless days of sarcasm, living like I'm in hell? At my words, employees whispered among themselves, looking puzzledly at Benjamin. Especially the female employees glared at him coldly. Well, sure, we had our disagreements as a couple. But it goes both ways. That's both ways? The balance is off. I was always the one being hurt. Benjamin seemed unable to hide his agitation against my counterattack. You're like a completely different person. What happened to you, Evelyn? That's right. I've been enduring until now. I had hoped that maybe you would change someday. But I never thought you'd lay a hand on our child. The onlookers' gazes sharpened even more. Benjamin forced an awkward smile, his forehead beading with sweat. Evelyn, that's because... Getting back to the point, shall we leave it to the company to decide who should leave? Oh, yeah. Perhaps convinced he would be chosen. Then, I'll go ahead and submit these divorce papers now. From this moment, you and I are strangers. Wait, Evelyn, I mean, goodbye.
I wanted to get away from him as quickly as possible. With Daniel by my side, I submitted the divorce papers. Despite Benjamin's strange confidence, it was certain he would be the one to leave. Although it felt slightly underhanded, Daniel is, after all, the CEO of our company. With the CEO on my side, the outcome was clear. It does feel a bit unfair, though. Muttering this, Daniel furrowed his brows sternly.
What's wrong with that? The fault lies with that man. To think he doesn't even remember the face of his own company's CEO and yet dares to call himself a valuable asset. The nerve!
I vented a little to Daniel. Daniel was red in the face with anger. Thanks to our talk, I felt much lighter. So, on the drive back from the city hall, we talked eagerly about the arrival of my child. I had no more worries. Now, I could give birth in peace. A few days later, I gave birth safely. It was a beautiful baby girl. Daniel came to the birth as well, shedding tears like he was welcoming his own grandchild. From Benjamin,
I want to meet her too.
I received a message. Has he forgotten what he did before our child was born?
It's too dangerous for you to meet her.
I replied, keeping a safe distance. While I'd prefer to cut ties completely, I left WhatsApp open as an escape route to avoid provoking him. He sends updates almost daily. After being fired, he managed to find employment in the same industry. However, due to the nature of the industry, rumors about Benjamin had already spread. Everyone's cold to me, and I can't find a girlfriend, he lamented. According to a coworker,
I'll never meet someone as good as Evelyn again.
Benjamin reportedly regretted his actions. If that were true, he shouldn't have done what he did. Currently, Daniel and I are discussing names for the child. We're struggling to come up with a good one. Moreover, Daniel was already head over heels.
I'm not letting this child get married off.
Showing an incredible amount of adoration. Though my parents couldn't see their grandchild, I'm glad Daniel is happy. Someday, when my child starts to speak, I want her to call Daniel Grandpa. I'm sure he'll cry, despite his imposing frame. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, you're the famous photographer. Are you here for a shoot today?
The woman in front of me stared at me excitedly. She, whom I met at the beach during clamming season, seemed to know I was a photographer. Despite being busy playing in the sand with her family of 3, she listened to my story with great interest. It's deeply moving to recall my early days as a photographer, when I struggled to gain credibility and couldn't get any assignments. When I told her I was here for a shoot, she eagerly volunteered to be my subject.
But could you please make sure not to show my child's face?
She said this, pointing to a cute little girl. The girl, about 2 or 3 years old, looked at us with wide, round eyes. Of course. What about you? I asked. The father looked pale and darted his eyes around, repeating vague responses. It's understandable, I guess. After all, the father building a sandcastle with the girl is my husband. My name is Sophia. A 30-year-old freelance photographer. Most of my work involves school events and weddings in the area. I capture moments brimming with smiles and friendship, sharing them through my photos. It's not just about taking pictures, but about capturing people's memories and emotions, sharing happiness. Capturing these joyful moments of people is my job and my passion. But my life's shutter stopped in an instant due to an unforeseen event. My husband, Oliver, was a busy businessman. Involved in developing leisure facilities and tourist spots, he traveled all over the country. Though we rarely had time together, the moments we shared were special. Even the briefest times with him, his smiles were what kept me going. I never intended to quit my photography. We promised to support each other, build our careers, and got married. I took the opportunity to work style from traveling around the countries to work from home. Starting with posting landscape and permitted portraits on social media. As virtual galleries and online exhibitions expanded my reach, not just among publishers and peers but also among a general audience, my followers rapidly increased. On social media, where I could do live streams, I began to earn from talking shows and explanations about my photographs. It was fulfilling and enjoyable that I told the backgrounds or discussed techniques sharing my photos. Steadily growing my followers, I balanced outdoor shoots with social media promotions. Oliver was still constantly on business trips. I inevitably spent more time with my in-laws, James and Emma, who showed interest in my social media activities. Teaching them how to use smartphones and social media, we grew closer, and they often tuned into my photos and live streams. Both are wonderful people who ensure my fulfilling days. The company kept me from feeling lonely while my husband was away. However, there was a significant void in our lives. We couldn't have children. Despite numerous tests, it just wasn't happening. As we both wanted kids, we were upset because we just couldn't seem to have a baby for years. And it started affecting us. Oliver, who once supportive, grew tired of the financial strain and frequent hospital visits, and became increasingly discouraged about infertility treatment. At that time, his project enters the climax, so he stays away from home for days, traveling around the countries. It was clear that his focus shifted from our childlessness to his challenging work. His concern for my inability to conceive diminished, replaced by work talks. I felt lonely but tried to understand his busyness. Yet, no matter how understanding, we weren't emotionally close.
Yesterday, I had a meeting with a client, and it looks like a new project is starting. I'll probably be away for a while starting next week.
He said this, taking shirts and other laundry from his large suitcase. I had just gotten back home, but still, I hurried to start the washing machine for them. Oliver, when he runs out of clean clothes, rather than doing laundry or sending them for cleaning, he just buys new shirts. He says it's faster and foolproof, but I prefer to save where we can.
So, what about the hospital? That's impossible. I have to go too, right? I can't take off work, and next week is a no-go for me.
I sighed softly, making sure my husband couldn't hear. I had made a hospital appointment, but there's nothing I can do if he's out on a business trip. It would be inconvenient for his company, and I was happy that his hard work was being recognized. I didn't want to be a nuisance.
Well, but I'm busy too, and it's tough. You also out working on a shoot, right? Let's both keep up the hard work.
Yeah. Take care of yourself too, Oliver. I was dismissed so easily, yet I didn't speak my mind. Maybe he doesn't want kids anymore. But I'm too scared to ask if that's really the case. Should I just accept it quietly, or should I bring it up, even if it's roundabout? I'm torn. I'm good at capturing people's joy and sorrow through my camera. But now, I'm just going through the days, not even aware of my own feelings. I feel like I'm getting trapped inside the frames of my photos. Then, one day, a well-textured white envelope arrived at our house, with a logo of a famous resort company on it. It didn't seem like just another piece of direct mail, so I hurriedly opened it. Inside was a voucher for a stay at a luxury hotel by the sea. And it appeared to be for 3 people. Why was this sent to us? With a sense of foreboding, I quickly went to my husband. Oliver, this came in the mail. Do you know anything about it? Of course, I wasn't accusing him from the start. I made sure to ask in a way that didn't sound confrontational, just casual. He stopped reading his newspaper and looked at me. His expression was blank, but his eyes narrowed slightly, almost glaring. I'd never been looked at like that before, and I couldn't hide the chill in my heart. Oh, that.
A colleague couldn't make it, so it was booked in my name.
It's nothing weird, so give it back. He reached for it. Without saying a word, I handed over the envelope and tickets. Oliver snatched them from me. But when he saw the name on it, he looked back at me, clearly annoyed this time.
This is addressed to me, right? Don't open my mail without asking.
I was taken aback and quickly apologized. But with my husband in sales, various DMs arrive. I've been disposing of the ones that come home without much thought, so I was surprised at his reaction. I'm sorry. I didn't know if it was direct mail, just wanted to check. I'm here today, you could have just asked me. He took the envelope to his room, and I couldn't ask any more about the tickets. I wasn't fully convinced why he had to book tickets for his colleague, but I had no choice but to accept his explanation. But then, not even half a month later, something else happened. It was May, approaching our wedding anniversary. We were supposed to gather at the in-laws' house, but he suddenly announced a long business trip. At first, I was speechless and confused. A business trip? On our wedding anniversary? In my job, I often get requests for family portraits or landscape photography. But I had plans, so I had taken the day off. Normally, a regular company, including Oliver's, would be off on Memorial Day. At least, his company should be closed as usual. He shrugged his shoulders lightly and forced a smile. It was a sudden decision, had to be done. I can't help but work through the holiday, so please go to the gathering for me. I know he's proud of his job and has been serious about his career since before we got married. But gradually, I find myself less convinced by his reasons for work and business trips in those casual moments. In the end, he just pulls along his favorite suitcase and leaves for work. Although they were angry at his attitude, because his call was so late that it was close to our wedding anniversary, they tried to make me comfortable. Sorry for making you free up your schedule in vain. I'll give Oliver a strict talking to next time I see him. Emma said that, but all I could do was give a wry smile. Originally, we were supposed to stay a few days after getting together. Oliver was the only child for them. I was told it would be sad if I left early, so I decided to stay a few days after our wedding anniversary as planned. I brought my camera and took pictures of them doing housework and everyday life, and scenes I usually don't focus on. I spent time thinking about shooting plans, but part of me felt the void of Oliver's absence. For work and a change of pace, I decided to visit the coast one station away. Around Memorial Day, the beach is busy with people clam digging and families enjoying their time. Some opened colorful beach umbrellas, enjoying walks and sunbathing. I walked along the beach with my camera around my neck. Suddenly, I stopped, noticing a family building a sandcastle. I paused at a familiar voice. I was glad I wasn't holding the camera in my hand. I thought that right in front of that scene, I wouldn't have been able to keep from dropping something. There was Oliver, with a young woman and a toddler, surrounding a sandcastle. They looked like a happy family, gathering white sand and shells. I couldn't believe my eyes. But then, the hotel tickets that arrived home, his frequent long business trips, his indifference, all came back to me. It would have been an ideal family scene for a photo shoot if it were a work assignment. But I couldn't believe my own husband was in it. The toddler, maybe 2 or 3 years old, seemed to match the time when I felt Oliver drifting away. He already had another family. Whether his real child or not, my intuition as a wife told me there was a blood connection. I felt like a glass frame in my heart was shattering. The photo inside that frame was supposed to be full of our happy smiles. I decided to speak up. Not to Oliver, but to the woman playing with the toddler. The woman, wearing a large straw hat, looked surprised as I suddenly spoke to her. I managed a smile and apologized for the abruptness. Then I pulled out my business card, explaining I'm a freelance photographer. My card only had my professional name, but also included my social media contact details. The woman looked interestedly at the card, then started searching for me on her mobile phone. Meanwhile, Oliver, fully aware of me, stared frozen at a point on the sand. Would you mind if I take a photo of your family? I sometimes do live streams showing photography tips. What? Sophia, I know you. I follow you. You post tips for mobile photography, right? She was excited, unaware of my situation, happy to be approached by a minor celebrity on social media. I was surprised she was a follower, but her enthusiasm seemed to extend to agreeing to a live stream as well. When I boldly invited her, she was all in before I could finish.
Of course!
Exclaimed, overjoyed. I felt guilty for deceiving, but my goal was to somehow document the other family Oliver had.
Can you teach me some photography tricks for mothers? Oliver, you're okay with that, right?
Oliver, caught off guard, was in a panic. I could tell he was desperately trying to avoid looking at me and thinking of an excuse. Maybe we shouldn't, show faces.
I do model for brochures, Oh, could you make sure not to include the child?
Later I learned that the other woman, Amelia, was a model he met through his company's PR work. Of course, I agreed, carefully adjusting the mobile phone camera to keep the child out of the frame. I set up for immediate streaming and started a live broadcast under the guise of teaching Mother Amelia. With the child out of the picture, Oliver, who was attending to her, became the center of the screen. His strange smile was interpreted positively by viewers, quickly spreading as him being cute but nervous. After the live stream, I thanked them and left. But it wasn't long before Oliver chased after me and stopped me. He had left Amelia and the child behind. I just asked him,
"What are you thinking?"
But he just stood there, sullenly silent. Probably, being with Amelia was awkward, so he ran to me. What did he intend by stopping me? Finally, he spoke. "Sophia, please understand.
How can I understand without a proper explanation? Well, I can guess after seeing.
But I had no choice. I had a child with her before we had one. It's fine. Amelia's family is wealthy, and she said she doesn't need to marry me." Oliver finally confessed the truth, defiantly. I couldn't believe a young woman who got pregnant would say something so convenient. Probably, she knew he was married. "I wanted a child. But you couldn't have one. She is nice and honest, and the child is adorable, looks just like her. But that doesn't mean I've come to dislike you or hate living with you." His words were incoherent, leaving me at a loss. He seemed to argue for maintaining the status quo. "I won't trouble you. This situation is perfect for me. Isn't this good enough?" As if that's an excuse. I should have argued back. But I was so overwhelmed with pain, I lost my voice. My husband, seeing me silent, sighed as if he had convinced me, and was about to leave. But then, unexpectedly, two people arrived. It was James and Emma.
"Oliver! Who is that woman and child?"
James, red-faced, shouted. Oliver was shocked by the sudden appearance of his parents.
"What? Why? I saw it on the live stream notification. Who is this long business trip with? Skipping home visits, with an unknown woman, and even a child."
Before James could stop her, Emma stepped between Oliver and me, protecting me, sharply addressing Oliver. I was also shocked. They had seen the live stream on social media and realized something terrible was happening. Shocked by the sight of Oliver appearing as a couple with an unknown woman, they rushed over. Confronted by his parents, he ended up confessing everything about his relationship with Amelia and their child.
Such a disgrace to the family.
He was struck by a strong slap from Emma, who was rendered speechless. James glared at him with an expression so terrifying that I thought he would have punched him if not for the slap. They left Oliver behind and took me to their car. Following their apologies and strong recommendation, I decided to divorce. After exposing Oliver and his affair with Amelia and securing compensation from them, things settled down for a while. However, as the divorce proceedings and investigations went on, various truths came to light. Firstly, Amelia truly knew Oliver was married. Given her willingness to have a child without marriage, it seemed she had prepared herself to some extent for a relationship with a married man. She had tried to keep the issue under wraps not just for money, but probably to keep Oliver around as long as possible. Upon realizing this, she became outraged and blocked all my social media accounts. Not only that, she started posting recklessly on various platforms, inadvertently revealing herself as the other woman, which only garnered sympathy for me. Her relationship with a married man caused trouble in her family home. Being driven out and nearly losing her home, she brazenly tried to live in my former in-laws' house. Naturally, they firmly refused to let her set foot on their property. Next, Oliver's secrets began to unravel. During the compensation claim investigation, numerous women and men connected to him came forward. It turned out he had repeated affairs during his business trips, with several partners over multiple occasions. Some of these affairs involved women who were engaged or married. I decided to send the data from the infamous live stream. A little investigation would reveal that I, the legitimate wife, was the streamer, and the people on camera were Oliver's mistress and their child. As a result, women who were deceived into thinking he was single and husbands whose wives were taken from them became angry and sued Oliver. He faced lawsuits from many people, including me, with no choice but to accept them all. As the truth about my husband continued to emerge, Amelia fled with her child. Probably fed up, she chose to escape from her relationship with him. The turmoil she caused on social media calmed down, and her accounts disappeared, so I decided to let her be. However, considering her nature of boasting about affairs on social media, it was unlikely she would just disappear. Sure enough, Amelia started posting under a completely different account. But her posts, portraying herself as a tragic heroine, were quickly identified and sparked outrage. Subsequently, she would delete her account when things got bad and create new ones, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Abandoned even by Amelia, Oliver apparently turned to his parents in the end, but their learning about his multiple affairs infuriated them further. Without any apology and only asking for help because he was in trouble, the parents-in-law decided to sever ties with their son. After the infidelity scandal, Oliver was burdened with a significant amount of compensation. As legal proceedings progressed, inquiries from mistresses and their husbands poured into his company, complicating the situation further. Worse still, this wasn't the worst outcome. His face being exposed on social media and the revelation of a child from an affair was an unprecedented scandal, especially since it happened during a business trip. The information spread quickly, and comments of shock and anger flooded related facilities and reviews associated with his company. The drop in trust due to the scandal spread both internally and externally, prompting the management to feel a sense of crisis and rush to devise strategies. However, not being familiar with crisis management, they were forced to hastily consult experts and develop communication strategies. Meanwhile, they instructed employees to provide accurate information, desperately trying to quell the confusion. The scandal led to numerous inquiries and criticisms from both inside and outside the company, rapidly tarnishing Oliver's reputation. He became an outcast at work, completely isolated within the company. In an uncomfortable atmosphere, the company soon wished for his resignation, and Oliver had to look for a new job. He was competent and had good sales performance. Preferred by older generations who don't use social media, he quickly found a new job. But human nature doesn't change. In less than 6 months, he was rumored to have made advances on the manager's wife and tried to expense motel charges from a business trip. He was fired and, even after joining new companies, kept causing troubles in his relationships and getting dismissed. After repeating this cycle, he is now hopping from one industry to another, being driven out from everywhere. Meanwhile, I maintained a relationship with my parents-in-law even after the divorce. Thanks to their care, I have been living peaceful days. It's because of their support that I was able to start anew after my relationship with Oliver ended. For a while after the divorce, I found it painful to take photos of children. Even though they got hurt betrayed by their son, they made an effort to show their good relationship and supported me. They helped me realize that my relationship with Oliver wasn't everything about marriage. They cared to give me the strength to believe again. One day, I captured a photo of my parents-in-law talking peacefully. I plan to feature this photo in my next online photo exhibition. They were quite embarrassed, but I think they'll be happy in the end. My name is Olivia. I'm 35 and have been married to my husband Lucas for 7 years. We have a 5-year-old son, Thomas. Normally, it's just the three of us living a peaceful life, but I have one major grievance. It's the long vacations and Christmas when we go to Lucas's parents' house. Only his parents live there, but during the holidays, his sister and her family join us too. During these gatherings, which sometimes exceed 10 people, I'm expected to handle all the meal preparations. Because I'm married to the eldest son, everyone seems to think it's my duty. His sisters don't help me at all. On top of that, they leave their kids with me and go out to have fun. Even Lucas doesn't offer me any help, so as the holidays approach, I start to dread them. Just the thought of preparing meals at my in-laws is painful, not to mention the harassment I endure from Lucas's mother, Ava. From the beginning of our marriage, Ava has criticized everything I do. The first time we went to visit after getting married, she told me out of the blue, "Olivia, please prepare all the meals while you're here." I was shocked. It was my first time in their kitchen, and everything was thrown at me. In a panic, I checked the fridge, finding almost nothing. I had to start by shopping for groceries. "Do you want anything specific to eat?" I asked with a smile without showing my irritation.
Just make something delicious. Don't check with us every time, just get on with the cooking.
Jackson, Lucas's father, seemed nice and calm, but I couldn't figure out what he really thought. Ava was always openly hostile towards me. Even when I casually asked Lucas about his parents' favorite dishes, "Anything's fine, don't worry too much about it," he always responds so casually. Lucas is originally unreliable, but since then, my distrust in him has only grown. In the end, I decided to make a safe choice and cook curry. As the smell of curry began to waft from the kitchen, Ava started her snide remarks.
"Curry gives me heartburn. I'll have to take some antacid tonight."
Without time to make anything else, I served the curry for dinner. Ava complained that the curry was too spicy, or that she preferred pork over beef.
"Anyone can make a decent curry,"
she remarked, leaving the comment hanging in the air, yet she went for seconds. Meanwhile, Jackson ate without saying a word, but after he finished, he let out a deep sigh and left the room. While Ava's reactions are irritating, Jackson's sigh feels more condemning than her snide remarks. Dealing with just my in-laws' meals is stressful enough, but it gets even worse when Lucas's sisters and their families join. Harper's family consists of Lucas's sister Harper, her husband Ethan, and their daughter. Harper, in her appearance and manner of speaking, is frighteningly similar to Ava. Together, they hurl insults at me, making it feel like there are two Avas. When Harper comes to visit, she expects me to handle everything from cooking to making beds. Of course, she doesn't thank me, she takes it for granted. Ethan, usually quiet around his in-laws and Harper, becomes tyrannical when they're not around. "Go buy cigarettes," he'd demand, treating me more like a housemaid than family. Their daughter Emma, much like Harper, seems spiteful.
"Olivia, we're out of juice."
Then Ethan would join in, ordering,
"Olivia, I'm out of beer. Bring some."
Laughing foolishly, the two of them enjoy themselves. They are usually quiet in front of Harper, probably because they're used to being scolded by her. They seem to let loose when at the in-laws. For me, who ends up doing all the work, it's unbearable. Natalie's family includes Lucas's sister Natalie, her husband Mason, and their son. Compared to the insidious Ava and Harper, Natalie is brighter and easier to talk to. She always comes to chat while I'm preparing meals. While it's nice to be approached so casually, Natalie doesn't help at all. At first, I used to listen to her seriously, but if she's not going to help, she's just in the way. Eventually, when I responded non-committally to her chatter,
"Are you even listening to me?"
she'd snap. Busy with work, I had to listen to Natalie's endless, meaningless stories about her husband's complaints or her in-laws' snide remarks. I wanted to vent to Natalie too, but I couldn't dare speak ill of the in-laws. As soon as Natalie realizes I'm not fully engaged, she'd tattle to Ava and Harper. Then I'd get scolded by both Ava and Harper.
"Just because she's your sister-in-law doesn't mean you can ignore her. You should at least listen to her. Such a mean spirit, bullying your weaker sister."
They'd freely insult me. I wanted to retort, "Who's the mean one here?" But I didn't have the courage. All I could do was endure the long vacations and Christmases. Even when I was pregnant, the treatment didn't change.
I worked as usual the day after I gave birth.
Ava would brag, expecting the same from me. I heard from Lucas that Ava had been badly harassed by her mother-in-law too. It seems she's intent on making me experience the same misery. I wish she would stop returning the ill treatment she received onto her daughter-in-law. Thomas was born in December, so that year, we didn't go to the in-laws for Christmas. Why don't you go home alone? I suggested to Lucas. He replied grumpily. It's boring to go back by myself, so let's skip it this year. He informed me that year, the siblings didn't stay at the in-laws for Christmas as usual. They left immediately. Without me there, nobody could handle the meal preparations, so no one stayed overnight. But from the next vacation onwards, the hellish treatment at the in-laws returned. Now, I had to take care of Thomas while preparing meals and accommodations. When Thomas dirted his clothes and I had to do laundry at the in-laws,
since we're letting you use the washing machine, do our laundry as well.
They started making me wash their laundry too. Seeing this, the sisters-in-law began piling their laundry on me as well. I ended up folding Ava's and her sister's laundry. Completely turned into a housemaid, they even dumped childcare on me.
Looking after 1 or 2 kids is the same. Please take care of my son.
They'd say before leaving the newborn with me and going out to have fun with Ava and the family. Only Jackson stayed home, pretending not to notice anything and watching TV. I was shocked when even Lucas left with Ava and the others. From that moment, my affection for Lucas began to cool off. As I was taking care of the 2 babies, one of them would inevitably start crying. Then Jackson would explode in anger.
The noise is so loud, I can't hear the TV. Finally got rid of the annoying bunch, and I can't even watch TV in peace.
Jackson, usually quiet in front of Ava and her daughters, didn't hesitate to complain to me. I hated his silent pressure on regular days, but him yelling like this was just pathetic. The men in this house only act tough when the women aren't around, then badmouth them behind their backs, especially Mason, who is amusing to watch because of his drastic two-faced nature. In front of Ava and the sisters-in-law, he's all smiles, serving food and drinks diligently. But when the women are absent, he's swapping nasty comments about their wives with Ethan. Not caring about how it affects me, his wife, they freely talk trash.
Why do we have to come here every vacation and Christmas? I feel the same. It's nothing but torture for us husbands.
Moreover,
just between us, my marriage isn't going too well, so next time I might not be here.
They'd say, laughing uproariously. Whether they're joking or serious. They don't care that I'm listening, the conversation escalates.
Honestly, my marriage isn't great either.
My wife is too domineering, always looking down on me. They glanced around, and seeing it was just me, they began whispering.
My wife is just like her mother. Thinking about her getting even tougher with age is dreadful. Daughters do resemble their mothers, don't they? Recently, even her face is starting to look like her mother's, and it's creepy.
Both of them were rolling on the floor, laughing at their own words. I began to wonder if Lucas also talked badly about me when I wasn't around. These two, laughing at such talk, would transform into entirely different people the moment Ava or the sisters-in-law appeared. They knew that if I told Ava or the sisters-in-law about their behavior, I would be the one accused of lying. That's why they felt free to speak ill of Ava and the sisters-in-law in front of me. Year by year, the workload dumped on me during the holidays at the in-laws grew heavier. Apart from meals, overnight arrangements, childcare, and laundry, now I was even tasked with picking up and dropping off Natalie's family. During a meal right before everyone was about to leave.
I'd like a beer, but I have to drive home, so maybe I should refrain.
Mason mentioned. Hearing this, Ava chimed in. From next time, let's have Olivia pick you up. That way, you can drink beer without any worries. She suggested to Mason. Mason, perhaps jokingly, agreed, but Ava took it seriously. No, you don't need to go that far, he said. But cutting off his words, Ava commanded.
From now on, you will do the pickups.
No one dared to object. In the car back home, even I, usually restrained, lashed out at Lucas.
I'm already cooking, arranging accommodations, taking care of the kids, and even doing everyone's laundry. Now I have to do pickups too.
Lucas, taken aback by my anger, was at a loss for words.
Is there no limit to harassing your wife? How much more do they want to exploit me?
My anger was justified. The in-laws' house was in a snowy region, making Christmas visits challenging. Natalie's house was a 2-hour drive one way, but in heavy snow, it could take nearly double that time. I knew Ava would expect me to finish cooking and then go pick up Natalie's family. Exhausted and asked to drive in such conditions was absurd. I'm not accustomed to long drives, and surely Natalie's family would be terrified too. I was furious that Lucas, knowing this, didn't stand up to Ava.
I'm cutting ties with your family. I won't see Jackson, Ava, or your sisters ever again.
I didn't want to see Ava or the sisters who did as they pleased. Hoping to calm my fury, he responded with a forced smile. Totally fine. I'll let Mom and everyone know, so don't worry. When Lucas talks smoothly like this, he's usually just trying to appease the situation. But with his agreement, I finally felt freed from the in-laws' clutches. I marvel at my own patience over the past 7 years of marriage. That Christmas, I went on a trip with Thomas and my parents. It was the first time since Thomas was born that I spent Christmas with my parents. It's rare for us to be together for Christmas. Is it okay for Lucas to go back to his parents alone? Having shared my in-laws' harsh treatment with them, my parents were surprised by the trip.
It's okay. I have Lucas's permission, so he won't complain.
I assured them, though I wasn't sure if Lucas had really talked to his parents. He had reluctantly agreed to cut ties with his family after my outburst, but I doubted his parents and sisters would accept it easily. They had been taking it easy so far, likely avoiding preparing meals themselves. However, they probably thought they could easily buy meals from the supermarket, so I assumed they weren't too worried. My parents, seeing their grandson Thomas after a long time, were overjoyed, and Thomas seemed to have fun too. When we visited the in-laws, I never had time to pay attention to Thomas, and I realized he must have felt lonely. Watching the three of them having fun, I completely forgot about the in-laws. Then, in the lobby of the luxurious hotel where we were relaxing, a familiar man walked in with a young woman on his arm. He resembled Mason, but he was supposed to be at the in-laws. The more I looked, the more he seemed familiar, and it appeared he noticed my stare. The man made a surprised face and quickly turned away. Likely because he was up to something shady. I pretended not to see and averted my gaze from the man. Just then, I received a call from Lucas.
Hello, what's up? Please, can you come to the family home right now? It's chaos here, nothing is prepared. Haven't we agreed that I wouldn't go anymore from this year?
I wasn't surprised. I had expected something like this.
I did mention it, but it seems the message didn't get across.
He replied. I figured he hadn't really talked to his parents. I had already informed them that I wouldn't be able to pick up Natalie's family. Natalie had complained, but it seemed she had been pacified. Lucas was desperately trying to get me to come back. But I was more focused on the commotion and what sounded like Natalie's voice in the background.
Mason has run off with some woman. He said he was going to work, but when I called the office, they said he was off today.
Hearing Natalie's words confirmed that the man I saw was indeed her husband.
Mason is at the hotel we're staying at right now.
I responded. Lucas was taken aback by the sudden shift in the conversation.
What? My brother-in-law is there?
I decided to tell the truth, thinking it would serve Natalie right for how she had treated me. Natalie must have heard Lucas's voice, as she snatched his mobile phone and started shouting at me.
Mason is there! Where are you right now?
Natalie screamed, almost rupturing my eardrums. Young and beautiful woman, high-class hotel. I replied. Next, Ava grabbed the phone and started yelling at me.
How dare you go to a hotel on your own? You think that's acceptable?
Even though they're shouting at me loudly, I can hear them.
I've discussed this with Lucas. I have his permission to not associate with you anymore.
I replied, deliberately provoking her. Ava started screaming something incomprehensible. Then Harper snatched the phone. We can't even have a meal without you. Please, somehow come back. Harper said, unusually polite, but I knew she only spoke like that when in trouble. In the background, Emma, Harper's ill-natured daughter, yelled, Olivia! Hurry up and prepare the meal! I couldn't help but laugh, realizing she was just echoing Harper's true feelings. The in-laws' house seemed to be in such a frenzy that I just hung up the phone. Since I had set my phone to reject calls, I didn't know what happened afterward until Lucas returned home. Seeing Lucas's reaction upon his return, I was prepared for the possibility of divorce. Worst-case scenario, I was ready to make a life for Thomas and myself as an office worker. When Lucas returned from his parents' house, he apologized profoundly. I now understand how hard it's been for you all this time. I'm truly sorry. Lucas had been burdened with preparing the Christmas meal, doing everyone's laundry, and taking care of the kids, especially Natalie's child, throughout the holiday. Natalie, after hearing from me about the affair, had tracked Mason down to our hotel, apparently catching him in the act. Indeed, when we were leaving, the hotel staff seemed flustered, and there was talk of a quarreling couple. Perhaps that was her. Everyone had complained about Lucas's cooking, having never done it before, and, fed up with their nasty remarks. I'm cutting ties with this house too. I'm never coming back, he snapped. It seems Lucas has declared cutting ties as well. Hearing Lucas's declaration of disconnection, I felt relieved and confessed. If you hadn't decided to cut ties with your family, I was planning to divorce you. Smiling as I said this, Lucas began to cry and apologized again. I'm really sorry. Believing in his tears, I decided to keep striving together as a couple. From that year on, we decided to go on trips with my parents for Christmas. Both my parents and our family are delighted, and we intend to keep this tradition. Meanwhile, the in-laws' house doesn't seem to gather anyone anymore. Natalie and her husband divorced soon after. Natalie, having custody of the child, now had to work to support her life, leaving her with no long vacations or Christmases. Harper also realized that if the other siblings didn't return, she would have to prepare the meals herself, and didn't want to go through that hassle just to visit her parents' house. Left alone, the in-laws led a lonely life, unable to see their children or grandchildren. Ava, unable to harass anyone else, seemed to have turned her frustrations on Jackson, and I heard from Lucas that Jackson had left home. Lucas, deeply affected by the criticism of his cooking at the in-laws, has been cooking more often lately. Watching Lucas improve his cooking skills makes all that commotion feel like a distant memory.
I'm driving right now. Can you wait?
I called my husband Jarvis, trying to hold back my anger. Jarvis answered the phone with a slightly irritated tone. I pretended to be clueless and started talking in a deliberately cheerful voice.
Driving? But the car is right here. What are you talking about? Oh, are you in this luxurious hotel by any chance? What? What are you talking about? Just so you know, your parents are coming over soon, so be ready.
After saying that, I hung up the phone without waiting for a reply. My name is Roberta. Ever since our daughter Stephanie was born, I've been a housewife. Jarvis and I, married for 10 years, never really fought and lived happily with our daughter. Jarvis is a salesman and often traveled out of state for work. But every time he went on a business trip, he always brought back souvenirs for us.
I'm home, got some souvenirs.
Welcome back. What's the treat today?
Today, it's Stephanie's favorite pudding. Yay! Let's eat it right away.
Life was enjoyable like this, and I often wished for these happy moments to continue. As Stephanie reached her upper elementary years, Jarvis's business trips became more frequent, shifting from once a month to almost every 10 days. Is it normal for business trips to be this frequent? I wondered, but thought. Sales position must be busy, and being busy is good. I didn't worry too much. Jarvis seemed to get busier with work, sometimes even working during his days off.
Working on your day off?
Yeah, I have to. Sorry.
That must be hard. Stephanie will need more money as she grows, so I'm working while I can.
Jarvis always seemed reliable, never showing fatigue despite the frequent business trips. I thought he was a great father. Even though I was concerned about his frequent business trips, I continued to see Jarvis off. I had no idea things would turn out like this. Well, I'm off. I'll probably be back tomorrow night.
Take care, see you soon.
Even though it was Saturday, Jarvis said he had a business trip and left for out of state. His trips were usually overnight and returned late. What should I make for dinner tonight? As I pondered and cleaned the room, I noticed a black file on the living room table. This file, usually used by Jarvis for work, contained documents for clients.
Isn't this something he'd be in trouble if he forgot?
I thought and immediately called Jarvis. But it seemed he didn't notice the call, and he didn't answer. I sent messages in a rush, but got no reply.
If he doesn't have this for sales, won't that be a problem?
I waited anxiously for Jarvis to get in touch, but it took him 5 hours to finally call back. Jarvis usually got pretty upset when he made a mistake, but he sounded oddly cheerful on the phone.
Sorry, I was so busy with work I didn't notice. Were you okay without the file?
Yeah, I managed. Luckily, the guy I was with had the documents. When Jarvis said this with a laugh, I felt a sense of discomfort.
Huh? Weren't you supposed to go alone this time?
Oh, suddenly, there was someone who came along. He's a newbie, so we decided to take him to introduce him to the client. You know, the boss sprung it on me out of the blue. It's a bit of a hassle.
I see, that must have been tough. Good job.
At this point, I felt something was off, but I didn't suspect Jarvis of anything shady. The next day, Jarvis returned home past 10 p.m. He usually came home after his business trips these days.
I'm home, totally exhausted. Welcome back. You'll eat dinner, right?
Oh, I already ate.
I'm just gonna shower and go to bed.
After handing me his laundry, Jarvis headed straight to the shower. While putting the clothes in the washing machine, I noticed a long, light-colored hair on Jarvis's shirt. It's longer than mine or Stephanie's.
A woman's hair.
My heart raced, facing something I'd never encountered before. A woman's hair is on a shirt he wore back from a business trip. In dramas or cartoons, such things often lead to the discovery of infidelity, but I thought that couldn't be the case. Jarvis had been on a business trip, and perhaps he was taken to a bar for business socializing. Being taken to a bar by clients is common. Though less frequent now, Jarvis used to often go out for drinks as part of his job in sales. It seemed that maintaining relationships is an important part of sales. And Jarvis, being so earnest, wouldn't cheat. I believed. Still feeling unsettled, I spoke to Jarvis while he was in the shower.
There's a long hair on your shirt.
Jarvis responded calmly. Probably from the hotel. It was a bit old and not well maintained. Maybe it's from a previous guest? Really? That dirty, huh? Jarvis's unflustered response reassured me. If he had something to hide, he would have been more panicked. Seeing Jarvis so normal, I thought he must be fine. Looking back, I regret not being more suspicious then. It could have prevented what happened later. After his shower, Jarvis went to the bedroom as usual, showing no signs of change. However, the next day, I discovered something unbelievable. As I was about to throw out the trash in the laundry room, I noticed something fall from the trash can.
What's this?
Picking it up, I realized it was a restaurant receipt. The unfamiliar restaurant name caught my eye, and I noticed the date was from 2 days ago. That is the date Jarvis was on a business trip, which made me feel strange. The receipt was for 2 people, which made it clear he went there with someone.
A meal with a client, maybe.
That's what I thought, but then I realized something. If it was a business meal, it would be expensed, and he'd need to keep the receipt according to company policy. A mere receipt, thrown away as trash, didn't seem like a business meal.
Then who was he with?
I pondered, staring at the receipt, noticing the time was marked as 10 p.m.
Could Jarvis really be having a dinner with a client after 10 p.m.?
The more I thought about it, the deeper my suspicions grew. Until yesterday, I was convinced of this. Jarvis couldn't possibly be cheating. But putting all the recent events together, I couldn't help but find it suspicious.
Could he be cheating?
For the first time, I began to think like that. Once I started doubting, I wanted to investigate thoroughly. So I decided to hire a detective to look into Jarvis. His frequent business trips seemed dubious, and the woman's hair on his shirt, and him dining late with someone, all bothered me. After hiring the detective, I was told it would take 2 weeks to get the results. Coincidentally, Jarvis had another business trip scheduled in a few days. I informed the detective and left their office. What if all these business trips were lies to meet his mistress? While talking with the detective, I couldn't help but worry.
Okay, I'm off then.
Safe travels. A few days later, Jarvis left for his trip as usual. Since I confronted him about the hair, Jarvis had started locking his mobile phone. He was never concerned about his phone before, but now he even took it to the bathroom. It only increased my suspicions. Is he cheating on me after all? The thought made me both dread and eagerly await the detective's findings. 2 weeks later, when the results were due, I went to the detective's office. The result revealed that Jarvis was having an affair. He was cheating with a woman around his age. Just as I had suspected, he was meeting her under the guise of business trips. It seemed that his increased trips were all for the affair, starting from when it began to increase. The detective provided several photos as evidence. Seeing those photos, I nearly screamed. The woman was my friend Esty. I met her at Stephanie's preschool and we got close due to similar pickup times. We'd visited each other's homes, but I rarely saw Jarvis and Esty talking. Esty moved out of the school district when her child started elementary school due to her husband's job. We lost touch after she moved. Not connecting on social media, so I had no idea what she was doing, but she was close with my husband. The photos showed Esty and Jarvis entering a hotel arm in arm, chatting happily at a cafe, and walking hand in hand in a park, all undeniable evidence of their affair. I was shocked to discover that Jarvis, whom I trusted, was cheating with my friend. The fact that he had an affair with my friend and then acted as if nothing happened around our family was unbelievable. Knowing this truth, I felt it was impossible to continue living with him as a family. The word divorce floated in my mind. Even after returning from the detective's office, I kept thinking about what to do for my family. While I considered divorce, thinking of Stephanie made it hard to decide what was best. Days passed without finding an answer. When I was thinking about weekend plans on Friday, Jarvis made a suggestion. Got any plans for tomorrow?
Tomorrow? No, why?
Well, my parents want to take Stephanie somewhere. Is it okay if she stays overnight? I'll take her, so you can relax, Roberta. Honestly, I appreciated the offer. I didn't want to be with Jarvis, who I just discovered was cheating, and I planned to use the free time to look for a lawyer. Sure. Say hi to your parents for me. So, Jarvis and Stephanie left for his parents' house, and I stayed home to search for a lawyer. The next day, right after breakfast, Jarvis and Stephanie left.
Mom, we're off. Take care, see you later.
After seeing them off, I started searching online for a lawyer experienced in divorce mediation. Reading user reviews, I checked out law firms with good reputations. While researching, I was also messaging Stephanie. An hour had passed since they left. Have you arrived yet? Not yet. Waiting for Dad. Where did Dad go? Don't know. He told me to wait, so I'm reading a book. Finding it odd, I checked Stephanie's mobile phone GPS. Incredibly, it was pointing to a bustling downtown area, completely opposite from his parents' place. Further inspection showed the car parked at a luxury hotel. The GPS location remained static. Could he have left Stephanie in the car and gone into the hotel? I had a bad feeling and immediately called his parents. Hi. Hi, Sharon. It's Roberta. Are Jarvis and Stephanie there? No, they haven't come. We were out visiting graves today. Were they coming over? Ah, if they're not there, it's fine. I'll call back later. Shocked by the words of my mother-in-law Sharon, I managed to end the call. Then I called Stephanie, who sounded bored. Dad's not back yet, and I'm bored.
Sorry, honey. Mom's coming to pick you up. Okay. What about Dad?
I'll contact Dad too, don't worry. After assuring Stephanie, I called back his parents. This time my father-in-law Gabe answered. I quickly explained the situation. When I told them Jarvis was cheating and had left Stephanie in the car while at a hotel, they were furious.
What is he thinking, dragging Stephanie into this? I'm heading to the hotel now. Can you pick up Stephanie?
Sure, we're on our way. I gave them the hotel's location and left home with the evidence from the detective. The luxury hotel where Jarvis was a 30-minute drive. Arriving at the parking lot, I saw Stephanie innocently waving at me. Seeing her, my anger towards Jarvis grew.
I'm so tired of waiting. Sorry, let's go home first.
Stephanie seemed unaware of the situation, which was a small relief. About 10 minutes later, his parents arrived. After handing Stephanie over to them, I decided to wait for Jarvis.
Okay, Stephanie, let's go eat parfait with Grandma and Grandpa.
Sharon, trying to keep Stephanie from sensing the adults' tense atmosphere, spoke cheerfully. After seeing the in-laws off, I called Jarvis. I'm sure he is in the middle of a very exciting time, so he would surely be irritated if I phoned him. Following a long ring, Jarvis answered annoyingly as I expected.
What now? I'm driving. Can you wait? Driving? But the car's here. What are you talking about? Oh, are you in this luxurious hotel by any chance? What? What are you talking about? Just so you know, your parents are coming here, so be prepared.
Of course, this was a lie. I thought that if I told him his parents were coming, he would surely panic. With that thought, I unilaterally ended the call. As I anticipated, Jarvis hurried out of the hotel within 5 minutes. Obviously having dressed in haste, his shirt buttons were mismatched. Esty, who came out with him, sped off in her car upon seeing me. I had no intention of letting her get away easily. I had planned to give Esty a piece of my mind later on.
Huh? Why are you here? Where's Stephanie? What are you doing, Jarvis? Leaving our daughter in the parking lot for an affair? Unbelievable!
Jarvis, who rarely saw me angry, shrank back. But leaving our daughter alone in a car for an affair, that was unforgivable. I thought it was unbelievable to bring her to a hotel parking lot in the first place.
It's not what you think.
His feeble excuses only exasperated me more.
What do you mean, not what I think? Helping her with parenting. That's all. No affair, just talking in the lobby.
As Jarvis stammered, I pulled out an envelope from my bag.
No affair? Then what's this?
I showed him the photos from the detective. Seeing them, Jarvis collapsed to his knees. He seemed to have given up making excuses.
We're going to your parents' house to talk.
I left the parking lot first. Arriving at the in-laws' house, Stephanie had already fallen asleep, maybe because she was tired. No wonder she waited in the car for so long. The sight of her only fueled my anger towards Jarvis. An hour after I arrived, Jarvis showed up. To be so late would indicate that he didn't want to come home. Gabe was waiting, arms crossed, at the entrance. Upon Jarvis's arrival, Gabe lashed out loudly.
What have you done? Say something.
Let's go inside, Sharon suggested, guiding us in. The atmosphere inside was so heavy. Gabe broke the silence.
What were you doing at that hotel?
I was having an affair.
Who with?
A mother of Stephanie's kindergarten friend. Gabe sighed heavily. Then he said quietly,
You're no longer welcome in this house. Don't come back. What do you want to do, Roberta?
Asked by Gabe, I voiced what I had been considering.
I'm thinking of divorce. I won't even let Stephanie see him anymore.
Until yesterday, I was uncertain about divorce, but today's events were decisive. I didn't need a husband who couldn't consider our daughter. That's what I decided.
Divorce? No, not that. You have no right to say anything.
Gabe shouted, silencing Jarvis again. My anger erupted too.
Don't want a divorce? Speak for yourself. Lying about business trips to cheat. I always thought it was odd, going on trips every week.
You were lying like that.
Yes. I went to a detective agency, and they found this evidence.
I showed the in-laws the photos the detective had given me. They sighed heavily, unable to say anything. Jarvis, cornered, started crying. His weeping infuriated me more, and I yelled,
"Why are you crying? I'm the one who should be crying."
Jarvis stayed silent, fighting back tears. I took out the divorce papers I had prepared and had him fill them out on the spot. We agreed on the terms for the divorce settlement. "I'll file these tomorrow. Can you pack your things and leave?" "Understood." Jarvis left to collect his belongings. We stayed with the in-laws for a few days, just to be safe. They were concerned about Stephanie and me. "Roberta, if Jarvis stops paying, we'll cover the divorce settlement."
"I can't accept that."
"It's fine. Jarvis has caused enough trouble. Will you accept it?" "Thank you." With the in-laws' help, we received the entire divorce settlement up front. It was a relief for me, transitioning to a single-parent household. Jarvis moved out, leaving Stephanie and me to our new life. We received a substantial divorce settlement from Jarvis and Esty, bringing a sense of closure. If anything happens, we can rely on my parents, and the in-laws are willing to help too. Although I no longer have a relationship with Jarvis, I still have a relationship with my in-laws and often visit them. Stephanie loves her grandparents and frequently wants to stay over. I found out later that Esty was infamous among friends for pursuing married men. She has had a number of troubles in the past. Because of my divorce settlement claim, her husband found out about her affair with Jarvis and they ended up divorcing too. Jarvis got involved with a bar staff and apparently is spending a lot of money there. Stephanie and I are enjoying our freedom, living happily as a duo.
Once I nearly died, and now that I've managed to recover, I feel reborn. I'm starting a new life, and I don't want to take care of some old hag,"
he said coldly, despite Victor's recovery from his illness being a direct result of me becoming a donor. Looking back, I had never received a single word of gratitude from Victor. In the divorce papers mercilessly handed to me, Victor's signature was already there. Yet, I wasn't shocked, just irritated and anxious. Since he regained his mobility, Victor had been gallivanting around, and I had been harboring suspicions for some time. And now, I had fallen ill. I had stomach cancer. It was progressing slowly, so it was not critical, but I still had to start treatment with surgery and chemotherapy. Full of anxiety, I never imagined being pushed away like this. All my love and trust for Victor vanished in an instant. The hard part is, to Layla, he's undeniably her only dad. I felt guilty about becoming a single parent, but I just didn't have the energy to try and mend things with Victor now that my own battle with illness is beginning. I signed the divorce papers Victor brought and returned them to him. A month later, Victor, having left numerous unanswered calls, finally barged into my hospital room and blurted out something shocking. "My name is Karina, a 29-year-old housewife. I had been happily living with Victor, a year my senior, and our 5-year-old daughter Layla for 7 years. Even after getting married, I continued working full-time until I went on maternity leave and then resigned from my job. I wanted to take my time raising Layla, but with the recession and Victor's salary alone not being enough, I had to return to work as soon as Layla could go to daycare. I got a job at an apparel company run by Victor's sister-in-law, Madison. They were looking for an office worker, and my previous experience made me a quick hire. Despite being family, I wasn't coddled, and the workplace was great with many colleagues who also had kids, making it easy to discuss childcare and take leave for emergencies. However, juggling work, household chores, and parenting was incredibly challenging. In the mornings, I prepared breakfast for Victor and Layla, made lunch for Victor, sent him off, dropped Layla at daycare, then headed to work. After work, I picked up Layla, shopped, cleaned, bathed Layla, and prepared dinner. Victor returned home just as Layla finished eating, and I prepared his meal while putting Layla to bed. Despite the hectic days, Victor wasn't very cooperative with housework or childcare. Even when Layla had a fever and I was busy caring for her, he'd casually ask, "Where's my breakfast?" If I asked him to shop for dinner because I had to work late, he'd complain, "I'm tired from work." Exhausted myself, I didn't have the energy to argue and ended up handling everything alone. Everything changed abruptly. Victor failed some tests at a company health check and was strongly advised to undergo further tests. He didn't want to since he felt fine, but started noticing odd symptoms like unexplained bruises and bleeding gums when brushing teeth. Ignoring it could lead to something serious. Considering Layla's future, I insisted on a thorough examination for Victor, which revealed he had leukemia.
Why me?
Victor was shocked, hearing the familiar name of the disease. But leukemia isn't incurable anymore. There are many cases of remission through chemotherapy and bone marrow transplants, and many patients return to normal life. I decided to support Victor, who was on the verge of despair, and accompany him through his treatment. He took a leave from work and was admitted to the hospital immediately. As for me, I had to juggle work, household chores, childcare, and now Victor's treatment. It was me who reached the limit first. The stress of hospitalization made Victor even more irritable towards me. I knew it was just him lashing out, but being busy with work, looking after Layla, doing household chores, and visiting the hospital in my spare time, I was honestly exhausted. It was then Madison, my sister-in-law, reached out to me. "Why don't you live with me? I can help with the household and taking care of Layla." Madison, the president of our company, was always on the front line of sales. She never left everything to her subordinates and always tried to catch the voices from the field. That's why her staff felt close to her and found it easy to exchange opinions. Knowing how busy she was, I felt guilty.
But Madison, you're busy too.
If you collapse now, the one who suffers the most will be Layla, right? I'll help as much as I can with Victor's support. Rely on others when you can. Madison's firm words made me break down in tears. I was anxious about Victor, Layla's future, and my health, and Madison's presence and words were a great relief. Victor's parents had already passed away, and Madison lived alone in her parents' house. It's too big for one person. I didn't want to sell it because of the memories with my parents, but I'm glad you two are here. Madison warmly welcomed me and Layla. Living with her was very comfortable. Our good relationship made it feel like I got a sister. Madison, who had been living alone for a long time, was good at household chores. Her active help made life easier than before. Then, there was a hope in Victor's treatment. I was a match as a bone marrow donor for him. After Victor's diagnosis, both Madison and I tested for bone marrow donation. The odds of finding a match are 1 in 4 for siblings, and 1 in several hundred to several thousand for unrelated individuals. We despaired when Madison wasn't a match, but I was, and Victor was overjoyed. I had to be hospitalized for a few days for the bone marrow extraction. During that time, of course, I had to take time off from work, and I couldn't take care of Layla. Both of these troubled Madison, but she didn't show any disgust.
I'm really grateful you're doing this for my brother. I'll take care of everything, so don't worry about anything but your own health,"
she said. With Madison's support, I underwent the surgery to donate bone marrow to Victor. He had to stay in a sterile room for a while post-surgery to avoid infections. I was discharged after a few days and, thanks to Madison's generosity, took a couple more days off before returning to work. The hematopoietic stem cells transplanted into Victor began to work properly, and after a few weeks, he was able to move to the general ward. When I took Layla to visit Victor in the general ward, a nurse was in the room. Seeing Layla after a long time, Victor smiled happily. "Victor is recovering well. He's young and strong, so he should be able to return to society soon if he continues to progress well."
"Thank you so much for everything."
After expressing our gratitude, the nurse smiled and left the room. True to her words, Victor's condition stabilized, and a few months later, he was discharged. He still needed to rest at home for a while, so the 4 of us, including Madison, began living together at the in-laws' house. I once again took on the responsibilities of work, house chores, childcare, and caring for Victor, but it was less burdensome than before, thanks to Madison's presence. Madison, who can speak her mind clearly to Victor, told him,
You don't have to overdo it, but try doing some household chores as a part of your rehabilitation.
Reluctantly, Victor began to help around the house. However, knowing his physical condition, I often ended up helping him, and eventually, Victor seemed to understand that if he did things slowly, I would come to help him, and he stopped doing even what he could.
I still feel tired.
He said it as an excuse, not even trying to get up from the sofa. Once, when a delivery arrived while I was preparing dinner and I couldn't answer the door, I asked him to do it, only to receive a heavy sigh and a complaint.
You're rough with people, even though I'm supposed to be resting.
I couldn't help but think.
It's just this much.
But Victor's pain was something only he could understand. So, believing his words, I tried to do as much as I could, even if it meant pushing myself. Perhaps because of overexerting myself again, my health had been deteriorating recently. Eating had become more difficult, and Madison even worried that I might have lost weight. By this time, Victor had recovered almost completely and had returned to work. Even though Victor no longer needed care, it didn't mean that household chores and childcare decreased. Even as my health worsened, Victor, perhaps reacting to having been told to rest, began going out alone more on his days off. He seemed not to notice my poor health and continued to neglect household chores. Once, when I asked where he was going and with whom, he became angry, saying, I have my own private life too. Eventually, due to stress, I started experiencing painful stomach cramps and, encouraged by Madison, decided to undergo a medical checkup. With Victor having been seriously ill, I thought it was best to take early action for Layla's sake. The result was that I was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Fortunately, it seemed to be progressing slowly, but I still needed to be hospitalized for a while and undergo harsh chemotherapy. Layla looked anxious about my sudden hospitalization, but Victor was out and didn't stay by her side. Instead, Madison was with her. To not get in the way of my preparation for hospitalization, Madison took Layla out shopping. While I was silently getting ready, Victor came back.
What's this? Going on a trip?
Victor asked nonchalantly. I snapped back, unable to contain my anger.
I have stomach cancer.
Stomach cancer. I've been feeling sick lately.
I went for a checkup today, and that was the diagnosis. I need to be hospitalized.
Hospitalized.
What about the housework? Will Madison handle it?
I was stunned that his first reaction to hearing about my hospitalization was not a concern for me. Indeed, the slow progression of my illness meant it wasn't a matter of immediate life or death. But still, facing a wife who was about to undergo harsh chemotherapy, his first concern was about the housework, which seemed incredibly insensitive.
Well, maybe this is for the best.
What? Divorce me.
Ha!
His sudden demand left me bewildered. After all the dedication I gave him during his illness, he drastically changed his attitude the moment I fell ill.
I was reborn after nearly dying and recovering. I don't want to spend my life taking care of an old hag.
Victor's recovery was thanks to me being a donor. Yet I realized now he had never shown any gratitude. He callously presented me with divorce papers, already signed by him.
You don't even bother to put on makeup at home. You're no longer a woman to me. But I've been so busy with work, house chores, and childcare, I haven't had time for makeup. That's just an excuse. And now cancer? I can't deal with all this. Quickly write your name here.
Victor yelled, and I was upset that he even said that to me. He shouted at me to sign the papers quickly. Despite the anxiety of my cancer diagnosis, I wasn't shocked. Ever since Victor regained his mobility, he had been out and about, and my mistrust had been growing. The fact that I was now sick meant all my love and trust for Victor had vanished. The hardest part was that Victor was undeniably Layla's only dad. I felt guilty about becoming a single parent, but with my upcoming battle with illness, I had no energy left to mend things with Victor. I signed the divorce papers he brought and returned them to him.
We're nothing more than strangers now,
Victor said, smiling satisfactorily as he saw my signature.
Hey, are you done? Don't just barge in here.
Because you're taking too long. Suddenly, a young woman I didn't know appeared at the entrance. She was dressed in a flashy one-piece dress and wore heavy makeup, looking beautiful. But upon closer inspection, I recognized her.
Are you the nurse from Victor's hospital stay?
She was Victor's attending nurse, although unrecognizable in her casual clothes. Apparently, she was his mistress.
Yeah. She supported me devotedly when I was sick, unlike you,
Victor boasted proudly. Supporting a patient is a nurse's job. And it was absurd to compare her to me.
Just get out of this house. It's my family home, after all.
He was brazen now. Though it was Victor's family home, it was under Madison's name now. But with the divorce, Madison and I were no longer related. The thought of leaving Madison, who Layla adored and who had been so kind and reliable, saddened me more than leaving Victor. But there was no choice. I packed my few belongings into a suitcase, getting ready for the hospital stay. I had no love left for Victor and wanted to leave as soon as possible. As I silently continued my preparations, Madison and Layla, who had been out shopping, returned.
We're home.
Oh, who's this? Madison, surprised to see the unfamiliar woman, and Layla, clinging to her and looking around, didn't seem to understand the situation. So I said it clearly.
Victor and I are getting divorced.
Huh? Madison looked as shocked as I felt. Then, to Layla, she said,
Have this snack on the way.
Handing her a snack she apparently just bought, and sent her to the next room. With only adults left, Madison immediately glared at Victor.
What are you thinking?
Confronted by Madison instead of me, Victor momentarily backed off.
He's divorcing me to start a new life with that woman. Since we'll be strangers, he wants me to leave.
Hearing my words, Madison's eyes widened in disbelief.
At a time like this, how can you be so selfish? You're the one who should leave. Don't ever show your face to me again,
Madison said firmly, and Victor left the house with a click of his tongue. The woman glanced down at me with a triumphant smile and followed Victor. Karina. I'm so sorry. Once they were gone, Madison looked at me with a face full of regret. It wasn't her fault, yet I felt guilty for making her feel this way.
Please don't look like that. You've done so much for me, and I can't thank you enough.
I felt somewhat relieved that Madison had decisively cut ties with Victor.
Even if you divorce Victor, I'm still on your side, Karina.
The house Victor lived in before falling ill was already vacated. Now kicked out by Madison, Victor probably had nowhere to live but was likely planning to move in with that woman. Although he had an insurance and subsidies, he wouldn't have much savings left after his illness. Well, he's a stranger to me now, anyway. Victor apparently filed the divorce papers immediately. We were no longer a couple, but Madison still supported me. I was about to be hospitalized and thought about sending Layla to my parents, but Madison offered to take care of her.
She's already anxious without her mom. A change of environment would only make it worse.
Since her work was stable at the moment, Madison insisted on helping me, so I gratefully accepted. When I was about a month into my hospital stay, my mobile phone rang. It was Victor, and of course, I ignored the call. Despite my ignoring, he kept calling repeatedly. When Madison visited me, I told her about it. She said Victor had also called her and even had come to the in-laws' house when ignored. She told him it was impossible to meet me since I was in the hospital.
Even if Victor says anything, ignore him. It's too late for him to realize your worth.
Madison's words made me feel supported. After saying goodbye to Madison, Victor appeared in my hospital room.
How did you find me here?
I hadn't told Victor which hospital I was in. After all, he never asked.
I went to the family home today. I saw Madison leaving with flowers, so I thought she might be visiting you.
He apparently followed Madison here. Victor's desperation was frightening, and as I wondered what his motive was, he clung to me.
My illness has relapsed.
It turns out, Victor's leukemia had relapsed. While a bone marrow transplant could lead to remission, it wasn't without the risk of relapse.
So, become my donor again.
His convenient request left me dumbfounded. Here I was, battling cancer, and my ex-husband, who abandoned me when I fell ill, returned as soon as his illness recurred. It was just too convenient. I don't know, maybe it's karma?
That's cruel.
And don't you have someone more dedicated to support you? Saying this, Victor looked frustrated. Apparently, the moment she learned of his relapse, his mistress had promptly broken up with him. She reportedly said she didn't want to deal with a sick person in her personal life.
I have no one but you to rely on now.
Victor pleaded, but I was resolute in my response. Absolutely not.
You're going to abandon me in my illness.
You abandoned me first, remember? Victor fell silent at my words. Besides, I'm currently consulting a lawyer about you.
A lawyer?
Yes, for the infidelity compensation and Layla's child support. I'm making sure you pay both in full.
But I'm sick.
So am I. As our unproductive argument continued, a doctor, alerted by the commotion, came into the room. He restrained Victor, who was trying to grab me, and took him away. Victor was later handed over to the police. After being interrogated, a restraining order was issued against him from approaching me. Hearing the noise, Madison returned to the room. She seemed thoroughly disgusted by Victor's selfish behavior. I asked Madison to testify, and after consulting with the lawyer, I decided to sue Victor and his mistress for compensation. While Victor was reluctant, his mistress readily agreed to pay as a settlement. Since then, I had been slowly recovering. Madison had been devotedly supporting me, and Layla, though young, had been helping me without any complaints. The cancer was successfully removed without any signs of spreading elsewhere. Meanwhile, Victor still hadn't found a donor and was living in fear every day. He managed to pay my compensation by depleting his savings but seemed unable to afford Layla's child support. Since he couldn't pay it, he was also not allowed to visit her, leading him to battle his illness alone. Madison and I continued to have a good relationship. When I considered moving out with Layla after my recovery, thinking not to impose further on Madison, she scolded me, telling me not to worry about unnecessary things while recovering. She insisted I use her money freely until I saved enough, so we continued living together for a while. Since Layla had grown very fond of Madison, even after saving enough money, we decided to rent a condo nearby. We visited each other's homes and had become like best friends. Despite the terrible separation from Victor and my own illness, having someone like Madison who steadfastly supported me was a blessing. I hoped Layla grows up to be a strong, kind woman with a sense of justice like Madison, and I looked forward to spending more time together. My name is Alice. I've been married for 8 years and have a 6-year-old daughter, Laura, and a 4-year-old son, Eddie. My husband Sam was a colleague at the same company. When I was assigned to the same team, I was supposed to support him, but being new to the job, I often ended up receiving his support instead. I was drawn to his work ethic and kindness. We had a successful project, and a party was thrown to celebrate. He was the main contributor to the success, and naturally, the star of the party. Amidst everyone's praises, he took my hand and said,
I really appreciate Alice's support. This success is partly thanks to her.
I responded, I haven't done anything significant. Thank you though. But I was thrilled that he recognized my efforts. As the party ended and everyone was leaving, he and I ended up being alone together because we were heading in the same direction. It's odd to say this here, but I'd like to date you. I have feelings for you. Surprised and overjoyed by his sudden confession, I was filled with happiness. It was because I had also fallen for him. 6 months into our relationship, he proposed to me. The proposal came unexpectedly on our way back from watching a movie and having dinner together. I was so overwhelmed with happiness that tears came to my eyes. Why not in the restaurant we just left, but on this street? But then I remembered that he asked me out on the street too, and I couldn't help but laugh through my tears. He was a bit surprised by my reaction, but after hearing my explanation, he apologized saying, "Sorry for the lack of delicacy." We decided to get married and started making various preparations. Among them, greeting his parents was important. Actually, both of my parents had already passed away. My mother died of an illness when I was in junior high, and my father died in a sudden traffic accident the month I started working. Being an only child, I suddenly found myself alone. So, I felt both joy at the prospect of gaining new parents and anxiety about what these two people I had yet to meet would be like. According to him, his father Jack is strict but kind and is someone he respects greatly. Jack's also still working energetically as a director of a trading company. As for his mother Emily, a housewife who always supported Dad and who loved and raised me with care. Sam shared that with a bit of shyness. I was nervous when I greeted them. Jack said smiling, "I'm happy to have you in our family. If my son has chosen you, then I'm relieved." Emily also smiled saying so. We continued to discuss various things about the wedding and our future home as a group of 4. After the meal, while helping Emily with the dishes in the kitchen, just the two of us, she suddenly said, "I feel sorry that you have no parents, but I wonder if such a girl is really suitable to be Sam's wife." It came out of nowhere. She lost the friendliness I had felt until then and feeling belittled. I was stunned and didn't know how to respond. While washing the dishes, she continued to express her dissatisfaction towards me. Her calm tone seemed to reveal her true feelings, and I couldn't bear it anymore. She never showed any sign of belittling me or speaking ill of me in front of others. The huge gap in her attitude was terrifying to me. Nevertheless, the wedding was grand affair. Sam said, "It's a once-in-a-lifetime event for a woman," and planned it for me. Jack agreed with his idea and helped make it happen. Many people attended, including our company colleagues and Jack's business associates. That made it a lively ceremony. Sam and I had agreed to continue working until we had children. However, it seemed that Emily disapproved of it. When I was alone with her in the dressing room before the wedding, she whispered in my ear, "So, you're continuing your job. A wife should support her husband." Poor Sam. "I quit my job right away to support my husband." She said that with a tone of sarcasm. There was a staff member from the venue in the dressing room to help us prepare, so I think Emily was discreet for their sake. I felt a strong will in her to never reveal her true nature or true feelings to anyone. After the wedding, we rented a roomy house close to my in-laws' house. It was a large property for just the two of us. "Let's choose a house with enough room for our future children." It was the room that Sam had decided on. After a delightful honeymoon, we began our life in our new home and decided to invite my in-laws over for dinner. Upon seeing the new home, Jack said, "It's a splendid house." He highly praised it. Emily just smiled and agreed with him. Based on past experiences, I could imagine what Emily was thinking and felt creeped out. After dinner, they left thoroughly pleased. I felt somewhat exhausted and just sat in a chair, zoning out. Sam noticed and asked what was wrong, but it was difficult to explain, so I responded, "I'm just a little tired." Late that night, there was a call on my cell phone. When I looked at the screen, it was from Emily. I hesitated for a moment, and it took me a little longer to answer the phone. "You took a while to answer. Were you planning not to pick up?" "No, that's not it," I said. "However, I wonder." She coldly responded, "Most of the dishes today were delivered. It's clear you're taking the easy way out. The dishes you made weren't impressive and they were bland. I'm worried about Sam's diet." She started by criticizing my cooking and then complained about everything from how the room was organized to the interior design. Just listening to her was tiring. Since there had been no chance for us to be alone today, she used the phone to express her feelings. That night, due to the exhaustion, I couldn't fall asleep and it affected my return to work the next day. Since our new home was close to my in-laws, Emily frequently visited. Sam was simply happy that his mother was coming over, but for me, even our precious days off weren't restful. I knew Emily's ways all too well, so I made sure to act smartly to avoid being alone with her as much as possible. When Sam was with us, she was a pleasant mother-in-law. But knowing her drastic changes, even that felt eerie and frightening to me. Whenever I acted to avoid being alone with her, there would inevitably follow a barrage of phone calls. Each call would last over 30 minutes, filled with complaints and snide remarks that left me exhausted. If I tried to ignore them, she'd sense it and become even angrier. I was at a loss about what to do. 2 years into our marriage, we were blessed with a child. Sam was overjoyed. When we went to inform my in-laws, Jack's happiness rivaled Sam's. Even Emily seemed genuinely happy at the prospect of holding a grandchild, but her true feelings became clear later. I always made sure not to be alone with Emily, but this time Jack and Sam were pulled away for work-related calls, leaving us alone. As expected, she said.
Really, it took you 2 years because you kept working after marriage. I always thought you were a useless wife, but you just barely made it this time.
It seemed she was always displeased with me continuing my job.
Emily, now that we've been blessed with a child, and as I've discussed with Sam, I'll be quitting my job soon to focus on parenting and the household.
I explained her, but her complaints continued. The return of Jack and Sam from their calls thankfully ended the conversation. About 5 months later, I resigned from my job. On my last day, the bouquet I received from my colleagues was the most delightful thing. 3 months after that, I safely gave birth to a baby girl. It was an easy birth for my first child, and I was able to leave the hospital early to start our new life as a family of 3. We soon invited my in-laws over to introduce them to our daughter, Laura. Jack looked at his granddaughter with joy. When he offered his little finger, Laura gripped it tightly, a natural reflex for babies, but he was delighted. I remembered Sam doing the same thing a couple of days ago, skipping around happily. I thought Emily would surely be satisfied holding her adorable grandchild, but I was naive. That night, I received another call from her.
It's fine that you have a grandchild, but why a girl? The first one should have been a boy.
She blamed me for not giving birth to a male heir, despite Sam being happy with our child regardless of gender.
I don't want to be criticized for something like that.
Feeling like our child's worth was being denied, I finally stood up to her. She was angry at my rare resistance and became even more sarcastic. It felt like my child was being ridiculed, and I couldn't take it anymore, so I finally told Sam about it. I had never really spoken to him about Emily before, and he seemed quite surprised. He also said,
"I can't stand the way Mom talks down to Laura."
And he apologized to me.
"I'm sorry for all the trouble you've been through."
He promised that from now on, we would keep some distance from Emily. After that, our interactions with her decreased, and so did the harassment from her. Perhaps because I felt more secure in parenting and my life with Sam, we were blessed with another child when Laura turned 2. Then, our son was born. Sam's joy at that time was even greater than before.
"Did you prefer having a boy?"
I asked.
"That doesn't matter. I'm just so happy that Laura has a little brother."
He smiled. We reported the birth of our son Eddie to my in-laws and showed them his face. Jack was overjoyed just like Sam and congratulated us on having 2 children. As for Emily, it was the same as when Laura was born. On the phone, she said,
"You finally gave birth to a boy. At least you've been somewhat useful now. But I wonder if someone like you can properly raise an important heir. The daughter doesn't seem to be raised well either."
Even at a young age, Laura seemed to sense the negative aura emanating from Emily. She was very fond of Jack, but she didn't get close to her much. That seemed to be a source of dissatisfaction for Emily. Ironically, the root cause was her own behavior, yet she seemed oblivious to this fact. Unable to bear her criticizing my children, I told Sam about it. When I played a recording of my conversation with Emily as evidence, he sighed and shook his head. We decided once again to keep our distance from her. Peaceful days returned to me. Time passed, and Laura turned 6, while Eddie became 4 years old. One time, Jack had to go on a long business trip overseas. The company was focusing on expanding its business and increasing dealings with foreign partners, and he was going as the person in charge of the initiative. A week after Jack left, Emily suddenly visited our house. Moreover, she brought a lot of baggage with her. When I asked what was going on, she said,
"Jack is away now and I was bored, so I decided to come and stay. I'll be in your care. Besides, it looks like you might be getting busier, right? I'll help out around the house for a bit."
Actually, just the other day, "Can you help me with my work?" a friend had asked me. The friend owns an interior shop and suddenly one of her employees had quit, leaving her short-staffed. Just until I can find a replacement. She said, I was considering the offer since my children were still young. I was puzzled about how Emily knew about it, but I was more shocked by her sudden decision to move in. Unable to send her away, I let Emily into the house, and she quickly started organizing her belongings. That evening, when Sam came home, I told him about it. He was also surprised by Emily's sudden arrival. She knew about the work request because Sam had told her. He had accidentally mentioned it while contacting her for a different matter. The thought of living with her was dizzying to me. I asked Sam, "Can you talk to Emily and get her to go home?" But he said, "It's only for a short while, and it'll make it easier for you to take up your friend's request." So Emily's stay was decided. I was relieved that I could go to work and be away from her, but I was terribly worried about leaving the children in her care. I felt like the children were being held hostage by her, leaving me restless. The kids talked to me about their interactions with Emily. It seemed that she was only paying attention to Eddie. "Perhaps because he's the heir," Laura said. "It's sad." And shed tears. Her sarcasm continued, pushing me to the edge. Combined with the fatigue from the unfamiliar job, I was nearing my limit. Seeing my distress, Sam listened to me. He said, "I can't overlook this anymore," and gave me some advice. Just like before, when I recorded my call with Emily, start collecting evidence. He had instructed. He handed me a voice recorder and a video camera. The next day, I began recording all of Emily's sarcasms. I set up the video in the living room and carried the voice recorder during conversations with her. Although her attacks continued, the thought of standing up to her gave me mental strength. As the evidence accumulated, I was strangely surprised by how much could be gathered in such a short period. Finally, she demanded that I divorce Sam and leave the house. The nerve of a parasite dictating terms in my family's home brought me to my breaking point. I discussed with Sam and decided to take action. "Get out!" When Emily said, "Understood, then it's goodbye." Hearing that, thinking she had one. Finally, even someone as stupid as you understands. "But what a terrible wife, leaving your children behind." She laughed and said, "No, it's you who will be leaving. That's why I said goodbye." Hearing it, "What are you talking about?" Ignoring her anger, I pulled out my cell phone and made a call. Once the person on the other end answered, I handed the phone to her. Her face visibly paled as she took the call. The person on the line was Jack, who was overseas. "What are you doing, leaving our home unattended like this? Isn't it a wife's duty to protect her home? You've been harassing Alice? What is the meaning of this?" Unable to respond to his words, Emily filled with anger. She began to sweat profusely, and her eyes turned vacant. I had asked Sam to gather substantial evidence, which we then sent to Jack overseas. In today's age, whether someone is overseas or anywhere else, data can be sent with just a click. "I've seen the terrible things you've done. I won't hear any excuses." Among the evidence was a video of Emily taking money from my wallet. I had been worried about my money disappearing mysteriously, but I never thought it was her. Jack told her, "Go back home immediately and reflect on your actions. Moreover, I'll be returning home temporarily and we'll have a talk then." Saying so, he ended the call. After hanging up, Emily quickly packed her things in a daze and fled back to her own home. Later, when Jack returned temporarily, he lectured her and even considered divorce, completely breaking her down. After the incident, she never interfered with me again. Laura and Eddie said, "Mommy would never leave us. Grandma doesn't understand anything." That's right. I would never abandon my precious family. Sam stood by me. I am resolved to cherish this family always. Thus, a peaceful life came to our family of 4.
Exactly as I feared. My bad premonitions had come true. It was more resignation than anger, a feeling of, I knew it. James would surely do the same thing again. My tears and anger, James' apologies, they were all just temporary. My name is Lily. I'm an average working woman, neither beautiful nor particularly skilled at my job. Yet somehow I ended up getting to know a man I met at a bar. and smoothly progressed to marriage. My female friends often say, "You're lucky to be married to a handsome man." But it's not as easy as it sounds. Women are always openly scheming around James, and he's well aware of his own charm. "If you keep being so demanding, I might get taken away by another woman." He had stopped listening to me. Outside, he plays the role of a loving, gentle husband, but at home, he's a complete henpecked husband. His mother, James could have married a better woman. Why settle for someone so plain and unimpressive? She's disliked me from the first meeting. Every time we visit, I'm bullied, and though my father-in-law, William, tries to call my mother-in-law Grace, her snide remarks never end. James, my husband, "Mom's just lonely because her only son is away. Just ignore her." He's more concerned about appeasing her than caring for me. They say love is blind, but often, "Mom's feeling lonely and cold." He goes back to his parents' house once a month, and it's too much for me. I wish we could spend more time together, just the two of us. Especially since we've been married for less than 2 years and don't have kids yet. "What's up? Dressing up all fancy?" "Just been invited by some friends. We're having a guys' night out." "But we just had lunch. I was about to suggest going out for dinner." "So early?" "We're gathering early since it's been a while." Something felt off. "It's been a while? You just had a gathering." He paused while tying his shoelaces. "It's a different group this time." "Really? It's not an affair, is it?" I had to ask directly because, well, my husband has a history. 6 months into our marriage, returning from my first outing since our wedding, I saw my husband stumbling and playfully kissing another woman. My friend and I were stunned, but my friend quickly said, "Take a photo. We need evidence." I suppressed the evidence of the affair when I was told to do so. I confronted him as soon as I got home. "You kissed me, too." But when I showed him the kissing video on my phone, he finally admitted it. They had met randomly at a bar, bonded over their mutual love of baseball, and exchanged contacts. It was their second meeting, and things got carried away with the alcohol. I cried my eyes out at the shock of his infidelity. He panicked. "I'm sorry. I won't ever do something like this again." He apologized profusely to me. I made him delete her contact in front of me. But I still wonder if it really was only their second meeting, and if they hadn't been involved before our marriage. After hearing his friends at the wedding say how popular he was in high school and college, I felt lucky he chose me. But now, those words make me anxious about him cheating again. After the affair came to light, he was subdued at first, but now it seems he's forgotten about it entirely, or rather, he didn't learn his lesson. Lately, he prioritizes his friends over me, quickly leaving on his days off. Even when I plan a 2-day trip, he suddenly says he has work and ends up not going. I'm even suspicious if these friends are really just men. "See you!" Lost in thought, I didn't notice him leave. I sighed. Why did he marry me? Did he think I was the kind of woman who would tolerate his cheating? I earn a bit more than James. Maybe he's just using me. Lost in thought, my mobile phone rang. Is it James, wanting me to deliver something he forgot? Annoyed, I checked my phone. It was a call from my friend, Chloe. It's been a while. Hope I'm not disturbing. Just concerned about how Lily's doing. I couldn't help but share my feelings with her. I'm physically fine, but getting snide remarks from Grace and James has been going out more. Chloe seemed puzzled, pausing before responding. That's tough, Lily. You never seem to catch a break. I know. I just want some peace of mind, to think about children or future. Lately, whenever I bring up kids, James quickly changes the subject. It's not that he's against having children. He just finds the thought bothersome. James seems content as long as he's enjoying the moment. So what will you do? Her question brought me back to reality. Continuing like this isn't good. I feel like I'm just being persuaded by James. I decided to take a bold step. I'll follow him. I'm off today. If he's cheating, he's probably meeting her today. Chloe calmly replied, Got it. I'm off to work, but good luck. In support of Chloe, I am. Yeah, I responded. Ignoring the situation would only make things worse. I need irrefutable evidence to make him reflect. I felt a strange sense of mission. At that moment, I still hoped James would change. But where could he have gone? He mentioned a drinking party, but if he's cheating, maybe he's out shopping with her. I searched for James's account on social media. James regularly updates his social media, and I once peeked out of curiosity. He closed it immediately, saying it was embarrassing, but I remembered the username. I never checked his social media closely, not wanting to pry, respecting his privacy. If I had seen it, I would have been tempted to tell him, and I would have respected my husband's wish to be embarrassed in his own way. But now, potentially being betrayed, that respect didn't matter. I searched his social media by the name I remembered. There it is. There was a photo of him, happily shopping with a woman wearing sunglasses at a fancy department store. His profile stated, single man, $100K income. I couldn't believe he could lie like that. I took a taxi to the department store in the photo. They were probably at the brand section on the first floor. If their shopping took long, I might find them. Walking through the store, checking shops, I heard a familiar voice. Ew, Sophia, I like this! This cost $8,000. I just bought you a $2,000 coat. It was James's voice. Exactly what I thought. I didn't want to be right, but I had to face it. I took out my phone, switched to video mode, and approached them. James, didn't you promise no more cheating? His reaction was entirely different from the first time. Oh, again? I was infuriated. Again? You're blaming me for catching me cheating? He sighed, making a gesture of exasperation. Was he trying to look good in front of her? But I wasn't in a state to care about appearances. But, without evidence, you just run away again, right? Didn't you promise no more lies? My anger from the first time he cheated surged, and I raised my voice, not caring who saw. Some customers turned to look at us. Then a laugh, clearly mocking. Lady, it's pathetic to cling to your husband at your age. It's a marital issue, none of your business. She seemed surprised at my comeback, then visibly annoyed. Figures why James cheats on you. Maybe you should reflect on your actions. Pressured by her words, James also started speaking. It's your fault for not making an effort to prevent cheating. You always come home from work with a tired face. You've given up being a woman. Look at her and learn. He pointed at his mistress. She, pleased with James's words, clapped her hands mockingly. How hilarious! She laughed at me. I was beyond dismayed. They seemed like a different species. I decided to leave this place quickly. I won't keep this matter just between us two. I'll report this to William and Grace. James, with a smug expression, Go ahead, he said. I left the spot and exited the department store. I was completely ridiculed by them, even though I did nothing wrong. Later, a sense of emptiness and sadness welled up inside me. Why? I muttered to no one. Tears streamed down my face, but I felt it was a waste to cry over such a man. I couldn't let this go. I had to find a way to make him pay. I called my parents and told them everything. They were furious and said I could come home anytime. When I called James's parents, William answered, so I told him about the second infidelity. William apologized, confused. I'm sorry. He apologized to me, bewildered. His apology felt more sincere than James, even though he wasn't the one who did it. But Grace, who took over the call midway, "Are you sure you're not mistaken?" And, "James is popular, so don't make a fuss just because he talks to other women." She completely dismissed me. Frustrated, William silenced Grace and hung up. I had a feeling dealing with the in-laws would be difficult. Grace seemed to want to dismiss my son's infidelity as my mistake. I didn't expect that. I wanted to rely on my parents, but with my mom hospitalized and my dad caring for her, I didn't want to trouble them. Dad tried calling James a few times to understand the situation, but James avoided the calls. Yet, he had the audacity to brag about his mistress to me, unsolicited. I started to feel mentally drained. I couldn't rely on my family, and Grace would side with her son, maybe even blame me. Then there was William. I think he's reasonable, but people change when it involves family. I couldn't handle this alone anymore. I decided to go to the in-laws alone for a discussion. I didn't bring James to avoid him sweet-talking his way out. Arriving at their house, Grace informed me that William had just left, possibly the worst timing. But having come alone, Grace sensed something was up. Unable to bear it anymore, I poured out everything that had happened. While speaking, anger brought tears to my eyes. However, Grace remained cold, and after hearing everything, "Is that why you came here?" she scoffed. I impulsively asked, "Grace, as a woman, wouldn't you be hurt if your husband cheated?" I asked. It was probably the first time I spoke so directly to Grace, but seeking empathy from her was a mistake. "James is handsome. You should tolerate some things. You should realize that you and James are mismatched. Then you wouldn't be so dissatisfied." Still, I protested. "But Grace, I've never been cheated on, so I can't understand." She added insult to injury. Ultimately, I left their house quickly. As time passed, Grace's words hurt more. Walking, tears came. I had no expectations from Grace, but it became clear I had no allies in this situation. Feeling gloomy, I didn't feel like going straight home, so I decided to stop by a cafe. Though still hurt, sipping coffee gradually calmed me. I couldn't focus on the magazine I picked up, but it somewhat distracted me. Just as I was about to leave, a familiar voice entered the cafe, unusually cheerful and loud. "Let's have lunch here!" It was Grace, unusually cheerful and loud. I sneaked a peek at the man's face. Grace, behaving unusually giddy for her age, leaned into the man's arm. It was clear they were more than acquaintances. Could Grace be having an affair? My mind went blank for a moment, but their behavior seemed unmistakable. She hadn't offended me earlier. Perhaps she was conscious of her own infidelity. I felt incredibly angry. Luckily, my seat was hidden from most of the cafe. I took out my phone and discreetly took pictures of their intimate behavior. I couldn't forgive James or Grace. I decided to plan their retribution. When I suggested a family dinner, even my busy cheating husband agreed. "Yeah, Mom gets lonely. I should be there for her." I was so excited to get on board that I contacted my parents. I inwardly scorned knowing about the other man, but it wasn't the time to confront my husband. A week later, we had a dinner at his parents' house. I played the role of a quiet wife. After dinner, as everyone started having coffee, William said, "Suddenly wanting a family dinner, is something up?" My husband looked tense. I had already told William about my husband's cheating. William was shocked. "You, with a family?" His anger was palpable, but Grace interrupted, predictably. "The wife is to blame for being cheated on! It's your fault for lacking charm!" Grace spat venomously, as if warning me not to say more. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Oh, so William lacks charm too? Eh? They hadn't expected that. William and Grace spoke up almost simultaneously. Because, Grace, you're cheating, aren't you? Based on your logic, William must be lacking charm. William looked at Grace, half doubting, half believing. Grace, red to her ears, burst out in anger. Me? Cheating? Ridiculous! You lying wife! Normally, I'd be overpowered, but not today. Ignoring Grace's intimidation, I pulled out my phone from my bag, showing the evidence photo to everyone. You! William, at a loss for words, turned to me. Not true! Not true! Grace desperately tried to cover it up. But it's hard to deny, when caught embracing another man in a cafe. When I saw it, my husband was surprisingly there. Mom! No way! My husband was shaken. Mom's such a dirty woman! Grace shouted back, You're doing the same thing! I never imagined my husband and Grace would end up shouting at each other. William interrupted the commotion. Enough! Apologize to your wife first! My husband, chastised by William. Why don't you apologize to your own wife first? Looked dejected. Lily, I'm truly sorry, he said. It's not you who should be apologizing, William. Grace glared as usual. Also, I'm divorcing you. You cheated with my friend. Leave the house and prepare to pay compensation in the divorce. How can I? I've never worked. Grace's voice trembled. William coldly stated, You're well enough to cheat. You can work. Realizing he was serious, Grace turned to my husband. James, you understand me, right? Let's live together. His response was cold. No way! You betrayer! They were both selfish, only thinking of themselves. I hired a lawyer and filed for compensation in the divorce against my husband and his mistress. William, now my ex-father-in-law, did the same, hiring the same firm to divorce Grace and claim compensation. My husband ended up alone in an old apartment, and Grace struggled in unfamiliar jobs, eventually working in a relative's factory under harsh conditions. Both are too poor to move away, so I hear rumors about them. They blame each other for the divorce and now hurl insults. Meanwhile, I enjoy my freedom, living alone. Less stressed than when I was with my cheating husband and cruel Grace. I might date or remarry, but for now, I'm enjoying my free, single life.